Okay. Ready.
Oh,
Please
he's going to
rise
push.
for the Pledge of Allegiance. Mr. Tobin, would you like to lead us in the pledge?
Please remain standing. Heavenly Father, bless this assemblage. Grant us the wisdom to make our every decision fair-minded and in the best interest for all its residents. Thank you.
Thank you. Roll call. Madam Clerk?
Yes.
Councilperson Lindsay Jackson,
Present.
Councilperson Thomas Nardi,
Present.
Councilperson Anthony Baxter,
Present.
Councilperson William Villanova,
Yep.
and Supervisor Gary Zuckerman.
Here far too long. First of all, let me apologize for those of you here for the Rye Town meeting. The previous meeting, as you may have gathered, was the Rye Town Park Commission meeting, which started at 6 o'clock. We had hoped it would be over at 7. It obviously was not. Sometimes the wheels of government turn more slowly than we would like. However, we are here now, and we're gonna move along. I'm gonna save the approval of the minutes even to, for further down the agenda. I'm going to change up with the approval of the council. I'd like to start immediately with the Tools for Change presentation, if we might.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Ready to go.
So I wanted to thank Supervisor Zuckerman and the council for inviting us to present this year. We're always excited to present, and we very much appreciate you having us here. I think what Tools for Change does is it teaches students to problem solve with community problems and challenges. And I've worked in Europe, and I run a program at Duke which sends students to Europe to work with migrant and refugee organizations. And what I've learned is something you may already know, is that Americans are really good at problem solving. They're really good at the informal, common sense, almost colloquial problem solving. And that's what the supervisors remark about the American students when they have European students as well. And I think the challenge for us is to teach more of our students how to do what we really do well. And Tools is a humble effort to try to do that and to use the motivation of a problem or a challenge the students really care about. And that's what we've been trying to do. And again, I wanted to thank you again for the time you've given us tonight.
It's our pleasure, Mr. Tobin.
So this year we focused on youth employment. We had a number of incredibly interesting discussions amongst ourselves about why some high school students look for jobs and why some don't, why some find jobs while others do not. How people thought about this seemed to vary by high school. So our question this year was, what determines whether a high school student in Rye Town will apply for and get a job? Tonight we want to share some of our findings and preliminary plans to move this work forward. So we first started off with the literature review, and we looked at census data, labor statistics, New York State law on youth employment, and some academic articles to understand the issues in Westchester County, Rye Town, and nationally.
Excuse me, before you go, tell us your name, please.
Oh, I'm Alejandra Chajon, and I'm a student from Portchester High School.
Thank you.
My name is Allison Gelfarb, and I'm a student from Blindbrook High School.
I think I know your father.
I think we all do.
No pressure, Allison.
So we realized that there was little to no data on what high school students actually did in the area of employment. We then developed a research strategy to collect our own data on what high school students were doing and match it to what at least a few employers were doing in Rye Town. We thought that a multi-pronged approach that combined a survey of many high school students in Rye Town and in-depth interviews with employers would be the most effective. Again, we thought these methods would enable us to compare the views of high school job seekers and business owners who hire teens. Here to talk about our surveys are David and Michael.
In our survey,
Excuse me, your name and school.
Michael Mary, I'm not from Blindbrook High School. In our survey we conducted, we asked high school students about teen employment. We asked them if they look for work, and if so, why do they look for work, and in what area did they look? Also, if they looked, we asked them what was their job strategy and why they felt they were hired. If someone looked for a job but was not hired, we asked why they felt they weren't hired. Finally, we asked about the impact of the new New York State law implemented, increasing the minimum wage gradually.
My name is David Rosenberg, and I go to Blindbrook High School.
We know your father, too.
Yep.
We put the survey on Google Forms to make sure that everyone did the survey that we put out. We didn't just send it out, but rather asked each student in the Tools for Change program to get 20 friends to take our survey.
We were incredibly happy to get about 300 high school students to fill out our survey, the most ever for a Tools for Change project.
We wish our survey was more representative of the town, and particularly along racial and ethnic lines. While we had a Spanish language survey, Hispanic and Latino teens were underrepresented. On family income, our data wasn't as widespread as our examples were skewed in favor of high family incomes. Unfortunately, we didn't get equal representation between the 3 high schools of Blindbrook, Rye Neck, Portchester that we were hoping for.
We also did interviews. We developed interview questions to provide information on the other side of employment equation, the experiences of the employers. Our interview asked employers why they hired high school students, where they found applicants, what criterion they were looking for, why applicants were unsuccessful, and the consequences of the new minimum wage law. There were some important limitations in regard to our employee interviews as well. Ultimately, we conducted just 2 interviews. The businesses represented appealed to teen consumers and also hired many teens. Also, they were drawn from the same region of Rye Town. So while we know we need to be modest in our claims for our work, we have some important findings to share.
So the primary job search strategy employed by high school students who look for jobs involved informal networking, such as family and friends. Of the 65% who looked for work, 30% did not find work. By far, the biggest motivation for high school students to look for a job was to get money to save or spend for themselves. Most respondents work as babysitters or do lawn care or in summer jobs. The biggest reason high school students don't look for work is that they were too busy, specifically studying and preparing for college. The most interesting findings shed light on the disconnect between how teen job seekers thought about employment and looked for work and how employers actually hired youth. These are some of our findings. Students thought there were few jobs out there. Employers seemed to indicate problems finding high school students whose schedules made it possible for them to work. Students thought grades, skills, experience, and references were the most important attributes for getting hired. The small number of employers we talked to focused more on personality, such as being outgoing, and presentation of self in making hiring decisions. Students thought they didn't get hired primarily because they lacked experience, or there were not enough jobs. Employers cited immaturity and not presenting professionally as reasons they rejected applicants. Our data suggests that the new minimum wage will encourage more high school students to look for work, but the employers we talked to will reduce high school hires and hours.
My name is Adina Kibble, and I'm a student at Blindbrook High School. A small group from this year's team, including students from each of Rye Town's high schools, have agreed to work to use these findings to improve the youth employment situation. The next steps in this work might include sharing what employers think and do with students and vice versa. And it would be very helpful, for example, for young job seekers to know what employers are actually looking for, and figuring out ways to better connect young job seekers with employers. This would be a larger task. In regard to the first step we have contacted Lisa Benoit of the Youth Employment Services, the YES program of Rybrook, to see if our findings might be helpful to them. For example, in terms of what they ask and tell student job seekers, and if there is a way to expand the service to all of Rye Town's high schools. The presence of students from each school on our policy team might make this a more likely possibility. Since we have found that personal networks are an important way to get a job, the YES program allows students who do not have a large network to find employment and vice versa. We also have been exploring some possible synergies between our work and this issue and the summer student internship program. We have had some preliminary conversations with Mr. Dave Thomas, who will be one of the leaders of the internship program. We are also open to other suggestions about improving the current youth employment situation.
So with that, we're open to any questions from the board or the audience.
Members of the board?
Well, I'll just say, as an educator for 23 years, I'm incredibly proud of the work that you've done. I think it's valuable work. I think anytime students engage themselves in this kind of work, it's always very productive. So I'm proud of you, and I congratulate you on a fine job. One question I had was, why do you think your responses did not reflect the populations of all 3 schools? Did you think about that? Did you reflect upon that? Could you have gone about the survey and the data gathering differently?
You stumped them, they didn't think you had any questions.
I didn't know it was that good.
We're trying, you know, he's a high school principal, so watch out.
So I think one of our main problems was the fact that the population of white students was higher than black students and Hispanic students. I think there was less surveys from Portchester High School, which is like dominantly Hispanic and black students. And I think the main problem was the fact that we kind of got our Spanish survey a bit late out, so we could have done a better job with that. I think as well it would have been concentrating in areas where these type of students focused more. So I think that was something we could have worked on. But it definitely did skew our data a little bit.
And one thing I would suggest is maybe in the future, doing this again, you may entertain multiple ways of gathering data. So you had Google Forms, for example, but maybe paper copies, you know, for people who may not have access to computers or Google Forms, they could still participate. And I would encourage you to share your data with each school's guidance departments so that when students do go out and look for work, they have access to your information. But great job.
Do you guys have any sort of peer plans for, I know you said that you were speaking with students and discussing with students the different issues that come along with interviewing for jobs, and you sort of had dialogue between yourselves and employers. Was there any discussion with your peers as to what the issues were or some of the roadblocks to employment?
We were hoping by implementing the YES program into all of the Rye-Town high schools, it would give the students the opportunity to see what employers are looking for by including a description of maybe the type of personality or the type of appearance or the type of just person in general that specific employer is looking for.
And have any of the schools expressed interest in like a job preparedness program or anything like that as a result of your findings?
So we're actually the first, you guys are all actually the first people that we've presented to. So we're hoping to further present to our schools later on and suggest implementing policies such as guidance counselors, connecting students and telling them what they should look for. So for example, in our survey, we found that a lot of employers want to see people who are mature and who present themselves well. So maybe now guidance counselors will be more focused on telling their students to present themselves well instead of getting a lot of references.
Judy, I just wanted to say something. I think that's the most important thing to me that came out of this is the different views that the students have of their performance and what they need compared to what the employers are really looking for. And speaking as somebody who was on the other side of the fence from you, I can understand that. You know, grades are wonderful, but how you present yourself, how mature you are, and, you know, what your goals are to an employer are far more important when it comes down to the final decision to hire somebody.
The question I have for the group of your entire team, Students for Tools for Change, what's the percentage of your peers that are currently employed?
Probably a low percentage, considering a lot of us are freshmen and sophomores, and I think the legal age is 16 to work, and there's only about 5 of us who meet that age requirement.
I think it was 14 to work in New York State. Okay, so there's your, you can probably boost your number right now. Get out there and go find a job. More importantly, so I think a good thing to do would be to, you're looking to, you have a good cross-section and a good representation of students, and you always do, and Mr. Tobin does a good job. and Mr. Thomas, of making sure you got a good cross-section of students from the schools. So you're looking for all these answers outside, maybe you gotta look for maybe some of the answers inside. So how many are the students who are here right now? We got a lot? Okay, so if you're one of the students, stand up. If you're a student in the program, stand up. If you have a job, raise your hand. There we go. So there's your number. You got less than 50%. Okay, so look to your peers that are working and try to get some of the answers from them. You know, that's one of my suggestions.
To answer your question directly, of the 65% of people who were looking for a job in our survey, 30% did not find work. So that would mean that of the 65% who were, 70 did find work.
Okay.
That's according to our survey.
Okay, we're talking about your peers that are with you, so my question was about your group of people here, not who you're looking for on the outside.
Oh, okay.
That's okay, but thank you.
All right. Anybody else? Any other questions? Do you have any questions for us?
I think somebody wants a job, Gary.
We have a summer internship program, right, Deb? We're
That's
going
right.
to.
Yep. That's right, and then in addition to that, the Rye-Town Park Commission, we're always hiring some, young people for summer work. Mayor Rosenberg and Supervisor Zuckerman sit on that board.
Yes, yes, would
Very
any of
good.
you like to run the park?
So that, all kidding aside, everybody here, if you're looking for a job, some time, the hours are flexible, the work environment is great, and
Except when it rains.
take the opportunity to meet with Mrs. Reisner, and she'll be able to get you an employment application. Maybe a good step going forward, and some of that information you can share with your peers and other people that are having a difficult time looking for work or part-time work, and it'll be another avenue for employment. And I also thank you very much, Mr. Tobin. We've been doing this.
Thank you so much.
We've been doing this year over year, and Mr. Thomas, with some great success, and we always look forward at the town of Rye for having you. I see all fresh faces here. I don't see any people that were here last year, unless I missed that meeting. But anyway, great job. Is there a couple? All right.
Great.
Veterans.
Mr. Thomas, you have anything to say, sir?
I think it's the first time I've spoken to the new board. Welcome all. Congratulations. Dave Thomas, Portchester, New York. I just want to say that the information that they have gleaned, we are definitely going to use in the internship program. One of the things that we try to instill in the interns is what employers are looking for. And actually, we have spoken to our past employers, and they have stated things other than what these kids have found. So now I'm going to go back to them and say, hey, is this what you're really looking at? So this is actually helping, what we're planning to do this summer. In my new job as village clerk, we have gotten the Village of Portchester to contribute to the internship. They have set aside money, and I hope, I'm not sure if you've actually, by resolution, put that money aside, hint, hint. But I'm sure you will, because this program is wonderful. Every year we find kids that just blossom from it, and the kids that, when they come back, they're more productive. The second year, they're more outspoken. Their presentation skills are fantastic, and that's what we need in the town of Rye. So, thank you, Professor Tobin, all the students. Excellent job.
And Mr.
Yes.
Thomas, anything we can do to support your mission as well, I think, I'd be happy to help out. You can give kids all the education in the world, but really giving them the first-hand experience of having a job, having that responsibility, that's something you can't necessarily teach in college, so.
And that's the thing. If anyone knows of employers that are willing to participate in the program, please let us know.
And
Thank you
Mr.
very
Thomas,
much.
speaking about in the budget, you know more about what's in the budget than I do. Okay, because you worked on it. I inherited that budget. So I'm going to come to you to find those little nooks and crannies where the dollars are buried.
I'm always available to my friends at the town of Rye.
I got
Thank
one
you.
question.
Yes.
Do any of the kids go out and look for, like, besides, like, with the internship and stuff, like in the trades or anything?
That's a good question. We've had a couple of students that are past interns that have gotten jobs in other industries, and it was because of the internship program gave them the confidence and the ability and the knowledge to go out and look for these other jobs. Part of what we teach the interns is how to look for a job, which is something, and then we connect them with these trade organizations. If they're not interested in office work, they can go and do the trades. And actually, there's a program in the high school, vocational program that they can join as well.
Okay.
So we'll be looking at the guidance counselors in all the schools as well.
All right, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Awesome, you wanna let them go? Wanna let them go to homework?
Yeah, they have to do their homework.
Congratulations,
Thank
guys.
you. Congratulations,
You
everybody.
can tell your
Professor Tobin, good
teachers
to
you
see
were
you again.
stuck at
job.
work.
Our next presentation is Relay for Life, American Cancer Society.
Back in 75, I know, 76, I was youth employment service at Portchester.
Hopefully she's still here.
And what they did was,
She is. Relay
That
for
was
Life
right
is
after
the
you were
woman
born,
right there.
right?
Relay for Life.
I wish. Yeah, it was-
But you know, they don't do the vocational anymore.
No.
It's like everyone's got to be a doctor.
Not
Greetings, my name is Nitisha Moore. I'm the community manager from the American Cancer Society. Thank you so much for this time, Supervisor Zuckerman and Council. And I'm here to ask for the usage of Crawford Park for this year's Relay for Life of Portchester Rybrook. Relay for Life, for those of you who may not be familiar with, it is one of the American Cancer Society's events where we raise awareness and funds for those who have been stricken with this ugly disease called cancer. I am a 5-year survivor of lung cancer. And I proudly stand here and talk to you about this program and about what I believe it adds to your community of Portchester Rybrook. Relay only goes into communities where there is a need for it and there is a request. So in 2012, as far back as I've researched, we began having Relay for Life at Portchester Middle School. Last year, we found that we no longer fit into the school policies there, and they requested that we no longer do it there. So this year, it left us homeless. Yet we still had a community that wanted to do Relay for Life. There are several survivors in the Portchester Rybrook area. We have a committee of about 11 residents that are working together to put together this event. We're looking for this event to take place on June 18th. It is an overnight event, so it would run from Saturday, June 18th to Sunday, June 19th. It will begin at 7 p.m. and conclude at 7 a.m. Any questions?
Yes. Please explain to the board, and my family and I have participated from when it first started down at the middle school. So I understand the format, I understand the footprint, how large it can be. I also understand the overwhelming amount of participants. So my concern is that Crawford Park, while appears to be large, it has limited parking. And I'd also would like to know the layout that you propose as far as where your staging will be, where you will be walking, and I know that you have
The luminary.
the luminary, but more importantly, you set up a like the showmobile. You have a stage. There's a
Right.
lot that goes on. So I want to get a better understanding of how you propose to use Crawford Park.
Okay, I actually would work very closely with the facilities person of Crawford Park to define what that would further look like, to find out what the rules and regulations are, and to make sure that we can have a lasting relationship with Crawford Park. What we're proposing right now, in terms of answering the first part of your question for parking, is that we would fill up the overflow area at the very entrance of the park. We would actually have volunteers with us that would direct everyone as to where parking would. So we would fill up that outer area right in front of the mansion, I believe it is, and then we would move over into the overflow sections. So from what I'm to understand, that the other I think, day that you have that is similar in regards to the amount of participation we would have is your Rybrook Day. And so the same parking that you would utilize for Rybrook Day, we would follow those same guidelines. Again, so as far as what the actual ceremony and how we would create a track, we would use the baseball field. So utilizing the baseball field, and we would actually place the showmobile. There's a section of speaking with the facilities person and with Laura, explaining to me that there's a area over by the mansion that's not wooded, so we don't destroy the grass there, that we can put the showmobile.
Right.
And then on a baseball field, we would have our tents that would be weighed down, not with spikes, but with sandbags. And we would have tents on the inner part, and then we would have some tents on the outer part. And the walking would take place through the center of the tents, so that you can see the fundraising, you can see the tables and everything that is set up, representing all of the teams that are there.
Okay.
We know that they're going to be working with the Friends. Laura's here. They're going to
Yes.
be working close proximity and working together to make sure that the park is not harmed.
Absolutely.
So these aren't individual tents then? These are main, like, military tents that you're putting up?
No, these are like 8 by 10, like pop-up tents.
Yeah.
Yeah,
the portable
Okay.
ones, and we rent them and we provide everything. And even in terms of lighting, again, we look forward to having a long-lasting relationship. Relay for Life operates in 21 areas of Westchester, so we actually have 12 schools and about 10 or so parks that we work with, and we work very closely so that we can return year after year. So we would do everything within our possibility and within our confines to work with you to make sure that we're able to continue this.
Thank you.
Thank
Can I
you.
just ask how many
Sure.
people you had participate over the last few years? What's a rough estimate of how many people you had there?
Sure. So the average from 2012 to 2015 was anywhere between 150 to 250 people. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Laura?
Laura? To the microphone, Laura.
How many volunteers do you have?
So we have a committee of 10, and we usually, when we pull in all of the teachers and everyone who participates with us, as well as ACS staff, we have well over about 20, 25 volunteers that assist us as well.
What I've noticed, I've participated in the last 2 events, and what I saw was people were always coming by and picking up trash and changing the trash cans. They had a lot of trash cans out, so that's good. And I was talking to, sorry, your name? Natisha, about the potential damage to the fields, and I said you guys should plan for putting down wood if so that the people that are constantly walking throughout the night won't damage the fields internally. And parking is an issue. Mr. Villanova brings up a good point. So I think using those 2 overflow parking and hopefully getting people to carpool into the park, because as we know, Crawford Park has no parking, which is an
Right.
ongoing issue.
So when we talk about, the parking, and I think that your numbers of 150, 200, I think it's a little light. You're gonna have more people than that.
Well,
think
so.
I hope so.
Yeah, we really, that would be outstanding. What we have found, though, even last year, was that we didn't have the full participation. And even with meeting with the committee, I met with the committee last night, and I found that they were just very disappointed with the fact that it wasn't overnight, that, it rained last year, as you
Right,
may
yeah.
have been aware. So their concern is whether or not, people are still interested in whether or not we can pull those big crowds. So even this year, they're scaling down in their estimate, even in terms of teams. Last year, we had about 50 teams participate. This year, we're aiming for anywhere between 25 and 30.
Understood. Okay.
I'll be there.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you, Natisha. Yeah, let's make may I have a motion and a second to approve the use of the park for Relay for Life?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
None opposed. Thank you. Let's jump to the fundraiser. That shouldn't take too long. The family soccer. Who's here for that? Family soccer fundraiser?
No one's here,
Nobody's here.
no.
Okay.
Do we
But
need-
that's scheduled for
Next
July
month.
3rd. So,
Next month.
put on-
Hope, tell them that if they want to have their event on July 3rd, they need to be here next month, okay?
I will.
We're not going to approve it in June for a July event.
Okay.
All right, thank you. And now, places for public spaces. And I think we're going to need the lights off for this.
Yes. Okay. Good evening. My name is Alessandra Galletti. I'm from Project for Public Spaces in New York, and Supervisor Zuckerman was so nice to invite us for this presentation. But I would like to ask if it's possible for me to sit at the computer,
course,
because
yes.
this presentation is being prepared to last for 30 minutes, but because we are running so late, I think maybe you would like to be a little bit faster.
We're okay,
Yeah?
because the rest of the agenda should not take that long.
Okay. So if it is okay, then I can advance the
You may,
PowerPoint.
please,
Yeah. Thank you.
instead of talking, let's do. Okay, and I should know, Places for Public Spaces was recommended to me, and the director is Meg Walker, who could not be here, and Alessandra works with her.
Yes.
And let's go.
Okay,
Do
so
we need the
again-
lights off?
Is this on? Can you hear me? Yes. Again, my name is Alessandra Galletti. I'm a landscape architect, and I started working for Project for Public Spaces 10 years ago because I got intrigued. The goal of Project for Public Spaces is to, create spaces that are successful to help communities, take charge of their own spaces. In spaces, we talk about plazas, or we talk about parks, and we call them multi-use destinations. We work in 43 countries, in 6 continents, and in all major cities in U.S. It's been, PPS started, I will call Project for Public Spaces PPS, because it's a tongue twister, especially for me that I'm Italian, and I apologize for my accent. We have plenty of partners and collaboration, especially we worked recently with Southwest Airlines to create a Heart of a Community, and that is a program that is really dear to us because it is like creating just bring together people, and the space is a chance, is an opportunity to bring people together, as well as your park. What is placemaking? Everybody has a different definition. It's something probably you heard, placemaking. Nowadays, RFPs from cities come with placemaking component, and each of you probably will come up with a different name, but these are taken from interviews from people, is community-based participation, reinventing the public spaces at the heart of the community, and it is a dynamic human function, and it is very important nowadays, to be part of a public space. It is very hard to create spaces that don't attract people, but it's remarkable how often this has been accomplished. This is the Boston Town Hall Plaza, and it's been designed as the Piazza in Siena in Italy, because it has the stripes, but in reality is empty. I don't know now because this is an old picture, but the design very often doesn't accomplish making a community place. This is Harvard University, and we work on this. And just putting some chairs in the yard, colorful chairs, brought people together, the students, the community, in particular this plaza that you see here, thanks to few umbrellas, chairs, and the food trucks, is really a communal area where residents and students get together. And this has been accomplished with a method that I'm here mostly to explain what PPS is doing and how we accomplish these improvements. So as I said, PPS started in 1975, working on Bryant Park. As you see, these are very old pictures of that period when Bryant Park was not like today. And studying Bryant Park.
Excuse me, did you work with Biederman at Bryant Park?
Yes, yeah. Fred Kent is the president, actually, of the founder of PPS, and they work together. This, as you see, that's a before and after picture. So practically, creating successful place will bring also safety. Will bring community together, and the maximum use of public spaces. A way that we do this is to create destinations. So because sometimes you feel overwhelmed looking at a park like yours, for example, and say, oh, where do we start from? So what we suggest is to create destinations. So, for example, there is, 10 destinations is a number that Fred actually came up because people always want to quantify. And it is actually a good number because now you will see the rest. So there are 10 destinations. This is the winter use that make sure that there is everyday activity in the park. Bryant Park is known for events, but what is actually the most successful from the PPS point of view is how, the everyday uses. They have, each of those bubbles represent something that is happening, and we studied that, in details. Characteristic of great public spaces. In all these years, PPS came up with theories, and you can also look on our website. It's very self-explanatory. People attract people. So if people are using the space, then they will attract other people. But mostly, we need to do, in a public space, everything differently. Not start from the design, but start thinking about, in making it attractive for people. It takes a community to create a place, not a design. Amenities that make a place comfortable are critical. Sometimes, to have like a amazing amenities, etc., is not as important as providing what people want. And one important thing that is you have to have zealous nuts, and I think in this park you have people that are really, they care very, very much for the park. Benefit of great places, why we want to create a good destination, because promotes a sense of comfort, create accessibility, foster social interaction, and promotes health. Like in the park, people could do exercise and have like meaningful relation with their neighbors. These are few things that PPS found during the years that really help public spaces, parks, and plazas. Water, food. Food really bring people together. It doesn't need to be like a major meal. It could just be an ice cream, as you can see from here, almost everybody except the little kid has ice cream and says, "Oh my gosh, I want that too." And seating, like I was saying that before about amenities, the benches up on the upper slide, they are like design benches, and probably they cost a lot. When the local that is near Fred, the Fred Kent house is a local bookstore, and there is the bench probably come from Home Depot, and is the most used bench ever, because that's people care about the space. These are more benches. We want to create places where you want to continue the conversation, even if the weather doesn't cooperate. So these people took out the umbrellas and they continued. These are more amenities, to bring, to create a more interaction, and there are ways to design amenities or to purchase amenities that create this kind of interaction. Is a picnic table in Paris Plage, and the dimensions and the way that is designed really help. So we, in public spaces and parks, is successful when you see that people really take their guard down, and they take off their shoes. Again, another concept is triangulation. So, for example, a carousel is very good, but a carousel nearby a children reading area is better, and nearby a seasonal display is even better. So we like to build, on activities. So one activity is good, but 3 are better. And again, going back to showing affection in public spaces as well, age groups is very very important. So there is not a predominant group in a particular park. Okay, so before I was talking, I mentioned about the Power of 10. The Power of 10 is a tool that you can use here in Crawford Park. So, you need to create 10 things to do in the park, but the Crawford Park needs to be a destination among the 10 things to do in Port Chester, Rybrook, and all the other towns. So it needs to be like, put on the map and in the region as well. So Power 10, as I mentioned before, is 10 things to do in each of these destinations that we divide the park. Like, for example, the carousel that I was showing before is up on the blue, and then so there are like at least 3 or 4 things to do inside of each of these bubbles. What makes a great place? I'm actually planning to give this PowerPoint to you, so I don't know if you want to share among the board, so you can, because this wheel is quite detailed and is again collected through all these years of observation of public spaces. But the 4 major components are sociability, that characterize like a successful public space is sociability, uses and activities, access and linkages, and comfort and image. To be successful, a public space needs to have convenient access, proximity to public transportation, and be connected. And the uses need to be local, sustainable, affordable, and active. For example, this is a similar situation as yours. They just put the chairs out, and there is like a very, kind of a show in the back. And or you can put games. This is a very low-key activity that will attract many people, including kids. If you have a high school with a chess club, comfort and image. Create a space that is attractive, maintained, historic, green, safe, and friendly. Create place amenities that are fun and different, and attract all different ages. Sociability, a public space, a park should be welcoming, interactive, people should be proud of, that space. If you have somebody coming from out of town, you say, okay, where I bring, okay, Crawford Park, for example. And of course, also public art, interactive is a very nice component. Just quickly to understand how the 10 destinations that you could work with are, and I'm sure that this is not, you will come up with these 10 destinations. But from our walk the other day together, there is, for example, the mansion itself, the Crawford Mansion that needs to be programmed with, certain activities, etc., and linked to the play and events lawn. So each of these bubbles represent like a destination you can take on, separate from the others and work on to, create interest and, activate. And this is exactly, it's just an example. I don't, it's not prescribing anything. Examples of work that PPS did. This is a park that is similar to yours in Dufferin Grove Park in Toronto. And it started very organically, and it is like an amazing community space. Everybody is like just is their backyard, but it's quite big, and they build things their own. This is an bread oven. They do events. This is an evening. We just stopped by with people from PPS, and this was happening in the park. So they have dinner there. They have impromptu theater. The playground doesn't look that great, but is actually very fun for the kids. How do you say, the skateboard up there has been built by teenagers, and etc. And I'm going to skip this. This is another project in Providence, Rhode Island that we did. It's a park, and we use this grant from Heart of the Community to, create a space for the children. The children actually saved this park because, I don't know if you're familiar with Providence, but it was not a very safe area of town. And, they started this program with the kids. And now this is a kid destination. They wanted a building in the park to store all their stuff. And practically the kids is pushed away, all the negative activities that used to be there. Now is, everything that you see before, like, the food trucks, everything came after the market, the family events, there is a beer garden in the evening. So all this, not every evening, just Thursday in the summer, came because of somebody thought, okay, let's see if the kids, we need a kids-friendly place downtown. Now, we're getting towards the end of the presentation. I want to show how PPS processes practically. We don't believe too much in design, but more in community-based process. So, as you see, we define the place that you have already, identify the stakeholders. That is not, that's a job that, the community needs to do. Evaluate the space, create a vision for the space, short-term experiments that actually we call lighter, quicker, cheaper implementations. And then, there is this implementation and you go back and reevaluate the whole thing. So step one, using the power of 10, you can, try to identify other locations nearby and, or in the park, see what are those 10 destinations, Crawford Park. And then identify the key stakeholders. Of course, the local government officials, community organizations, but also the residents, business owners in the vicinity, because there are plenty in, close to the park, professionals, students, they were looking for a job, so they can, maybe help managing the process and the interviews, etc. Step 2, evaluate space, identify opportunities. So based on this, there is an evaluation based on sociability, uses, comfort, and access. Of course, the access could include the parking. So this evaluation is done with a workshop. So people walk around, observe, they come back, they discuss, and they will come up. Generally, they are very. A lot of things happen during these workshops. They are like a new partnership forming, or like just great ideas. Other possibility are topical focus groups. So, for example, merchants, or the gardeners, or sport people. They could have the focus group. Pop-up workshops. It doesn't need to be at the park. That could be located, again, in the schools, in Portchester, in Rye. So you can go around with these boards. Placemaking events at the park, where you collect ideas, etc. Then you create a vision that, translate the vision in a lighter, quicker, cheaper plan with, immediate activities, immediate amenities, or things like that. And so, for example, this is a beach that we installed in Detroit, very successful. They just dump the sand. At the end of the summer, they take it away. So this is a timeline of steps to have this lighter, quicker, cheaper. If you want, you can go on our website. And how to make this happen. There's a whole list that also is on the website. This is a kit of parts that we put together for the Red Box. That it was together for the libraries. So we did in several libraries. This was super inexpensive, and and there were not the many amenities, but they thought maybe everything red was, making the trick. So in fact, it looked much more than what it is. Oh yeah, and then also think about what you could put: seating, shade, planters, not for you, but maybe for other situations. Step 5, then you go back after a season and you reevaluate and see, what the need of long-term improvements. And then after a season or two that you have these improvements happening, then you can go back and reevaluate and develop a long-term plan. Okay, so thank you. This is all. I'm sorry that I ran through as much as possible. Do you have any questions?
I'm sure we do. Billy?
Well, I have a comment and then a question.
Yes.
So, first comment that a few slides back in the middle of your presentation, one of the comments was in orange that you start the process not looking for the outcome. I think that I'm paraphrasing, but I think that's important. You can't say, well, just because it's done this way today, it needs to be that way in the future, because you never know what it's going to be. And Supervisor Zuckerman just whispered in my ear, how the process needs to be organic and kind of evolve. And obviously, the stakeholders would be the ones that would set parameters, to help make sure that the process works well. The other question that I have is, looking at all the photographs and the examples that you gave us, were all public spaces that were near well-traveled or the heart of communities. Crawford Park's unique. It's off the beaten path, and parking is limited. Public transportation does not go that way. At least, it doesn't. There's no stop for it. So we have a couple things kind of going against us with Crawford Park. How do you overcome obstacles like that?
Yes. I don't know if we had the slide with that, but maybe with the orange kind of headlines, where but the community is the expert. So we need we need to ask the community how they would resolve that. Because, for example, the other day I was driving away from the park, and they pointed that actually there is a bus stop not too far away from the park. So that is really walking distance from the Lincoln Avenue entrance.
Lincoln and Westchester.
What-
Lincoln and Westchester Avenue.
Yeah.
That's the bus stop.
Is that too far away?
It's a good walk.
It's a good walk.
Yeah, it's a good walk.
Yeah, so
And those roads
maybe
you
the
don't really
first
wanna be
year,
walking on.
Lincoln Avenue's not a problem to walk on. It's, well, Lincoln
The
Avenue's no
traffic is
sidewalk.
fast.
There's
Yeah,
no
that's what I
sidewalk.
mean.
but it is a nice stop, though.
It's a nice stop,
It's a
but there's
very
no
nice stop.
sidewalk. Lincoln
Yeah,
Avenue has no
but-
sidewalk.
And the cars swing by.
Right, but
And they
it's on, yes, you have to cross, so maybe you can start looking at that.
Right.
And then after, 1 year that you do experimentations, there is a clear signage, okay, from this stop, you go this way, and then, the safe way to go across and get the bus going back is this. So if there is the kind of communication for the first year, then in the future, when it becomes successful and a destination, and people really want, okay, I want to go to that park because I belong to that park, then maybe it's a different kind of discussion with the board.
You're right.
Maybe there is a bus
Right.
detour.
And then your other slide, which, piqued my interest, is you're talking about introducing food. So we introduce food into everything. Hopefully you introduce food into me in about a half hour.
Or you're just Italian, you know.
But I always thought of Rye Town Park, I would love to have a cafe at Rye Town Park. Why not do a small cafe, at Crawford Park? I'm always looking for a place to go for a cup of coffee, a little something to sit down and
But
relax.
you are not alone, because
That
there are
could be
all
it.
the parents from the soccer players that are asking that as well.
Yeah.
So, and many other, because it's so beautiful, that park. And the mansion is very, very beautiful. So if you have, I'm not saying in the mansion there is a
Yeah.
kitchen, but yeah. So
You know what I
there's-
think, the thing that piqued my interest was the concept of activities and events. There's some people who love to walk in the park because it's beautiful and it's green, and just for that ambiance. And I always say this when I talk about parks, is decisions have to be made by the community as to how active the park should be. I always use the example because we had this a number of years ago when certain people wanted to put a community swimming pool in one of our parks, and, there were a lot of opposition to that. It's high activity. Tennis courts, high activity. Okay? On the other hand, you have other things that could be very low activity. So, for example, chess tables. It's a beautiful place to have a table outside where a group of people can play, chess, checkers, things like that. And, then there's obviously the events. Do we have music events? We already have music in the mansion. We have times when we have music outside, possibly. So there are all those things, but I think the main thing that we need to concentrate on is how do we get there from here? And I saw the groups of people discussing it. We've had that before in master planning for the communities, where the planner comes in and you sit down, you bang around ideas around tables, you discuss ideas, and that's how it works organically, I think, so that the people come up with the idea of what they want their park to be. And then the government's job is to help facilitate that, raise money, through tax, through sponsorships of some kind, however we decide to do it. So I think that it all comes down to the people wanting to use this park. And we need, I think you're here to suggest the guidance that we need to put that all together in a professional way.
Well, Gary, to that point, I think when I think of the community, especially, Rye Brook, Portchester, and the Rye Neck section of Mamaroneck, I think there's sort of a deluge of young families, people with children, lots of activity coming, you know. One thing that's very important, I think, throughout the entire Rye-Town community is the need for different sports fields. We do have the baseball diamond, as we were talking about before. Lacrosse is becoming prevalent in Rye-Brook and Rye-Neck, and, you know, they're trying to start up in Portchester, so there's going to be a need for lacrosse fields, something kind of multi-use, so it could be used for soccer, it could be used for lacrosse, you know, the lines can change, it could be used for baseball, it can be used for football. And the other feature that I really liked in the presentation, and it's something that I really admire what they did with Bryant Park, was sort of the multi-seasonal, especially in the winter. The winter is sort of the dead season, you know, it's very dark, cold, there's not a lot of activities. I know in Westchester County, they did the Winter Wonderland at the Kensico Dam. It's a holiday light show, it's an ice skating rink, it's, you know, something that really, especially something to promote physical activity during the winter.
You just raised something, an ice skating rink. Now, I know that there was a proposal in Rye-Brook for a 4 huge rink thing, but what about, for example, a portable outdoor ice skating rink in the wintertime for people to come and skate on, just skate on?
And when I worked for the county and the Playland ice skating rink was down and out of commission because of the damage from the roof, there were a lot of people calling from all over the county, but especially, you know, Rye-Brook, Mamaroneck, Portchester, hockey parents that, you know, were looking for rink for their kids, so it could be outdoors, but it could be.
People are always looking for that kind of activity, and it's something that would probably not harm the fields at all. I'm just suggesting, throwing it out. Laura, you hear me? Just throwing it out.
And then another thing that I know Mr. Nardi would agree with me on, Mr. Villanova, something maybe for the dogs.
Yes. Yes.
Just say.
The dogs always come up somehow in the park. Somehow in the park.
Just to say, the dogs very often they save places
Yeah.
because you put a dog park in the middle of, you know, the darker area, and they go there.
Yeah.
Because
I think these are all great ideas throwing out, but the main thing we have to understand is that the people have to determine the use. The government can't do it. And I go back to the very first slide where you had Boston, it's called the BPH. I know because I went to law school in Boston.
yes, the Boston Town Hall. You know,
Right.
just because it's a reference to the design, it doesn't really count because if you can do the best design or inspired by.
If you go top down, if the government
Yeah.
comes up with an idea that we're going to do this, that doesn't guarantee that people are going to use it. It's going to be a waste of money.
Yeah.
But if the people design it because they want it, the residents want it, for the uses that they would like to do at that place, then it will be used, and the money that is spent will be money well spent, not wasted.
And people will care for
Yes.
the space because it's their space. And, you know, like they were saying before, they will pick up the garbage or, you know, just taking care.
Right. All right.
And I would just add to that, first of all, thank you very much for your presentation, and you were very patient in waiting through everything else, and we all
Oh,
appreciate it. And
thank you
you've
for
done
that.
some great work, and I think it's exciting. Part of what's exciting about it is that it is dynamic, in that it can change year to year. I think it's exciting to involve stakeholders. I think Gary's absolutely right, that if we decide something, it doesn't mean a hill of beans if people aren't going to use it. So it's important to get investment from the community, and certainly the Friends would be a part of that. And residents, and I would encourage us to think about students being a part of that, because young people are going to use it as well, and they represent multiple generations of people who would use the park. It's this consistent and constant re-envisioning of public spaces that we're really talking about. What we do one year, we may not do the next. I, for example, was excited to see an amphitheater,
Yes.
you know, included in that. I mean, that's something we've talked about, the potential for outdoor entertainment. So but I don't think it should be prescribed by any of us. I think it's got to come from that stakeholder group. Would that be something that you facilitated? Your group would facilitate the
Yes.
public workshops and working with the stakeholders?
Yes, and again, that's why I said I would like to leave you this presentation, because there is clear steps how
Okay.
we can help you with. But the way that PPS does these workshops is really exciting, because people really feel part. We separate groups, we have a technique for everything. Even when you arrive together, you get a number, so you cannot stay with your friends and you need to go with other people. And also we will suggest who to invite or who you're forgetting, because I know that you want to invite everybody, but I don't know. For example, there is that, what is a Hyatt hotel next, there's-
Hilton.
Yes,
The
so
Hilton.
maybe inviting the management of that, because they are neighbors after all. I'm just saying, so if there is anything, we can look at all the details.
And the office, we could, the management of 800 Westchester, Robert White owns that building, and, it's a big office building nearby, it's a good neighbor, and, maybe they could participate.
Yes.
The Rye Ridge Shopping Center is not far away. The
Yep.
business community should be definitely invited. Debbie, we could put that up on the website, the presentation, and,
Yeah, so I like just to fix the typeface, because we got
yeah, it didn't, yeah,
the PDF, yes. and
yeah, you
that's,
could fix it up any way you want, we'll put it up on the website.
Okay.
And we'll discuss the next steps, because we all have received the proposal, and we'll have to discuss that from a business point of view. Of course, it does involve funding. And we'll discuss the next steps as to how to go forward. Right? I remember the word, they use it in master plan, comprehensive plan, charrettes. You have charrettes
yes.
of groups of people who move back and forth and.
No, we call it the game. We do a game because people go out and observe and come up with ideas, and it's a group of 5 or 6 people, and they come back and do like a drawing. So there is not really a professional with them. So they really is not guided by a professional. So we will be there, we'll give instructions just to facilitate the time, but it's really, it is really very surprising, the results.
Right,
If you let
great.
people.
Great.
If I can, and I know I was absent the last meeting, I'm kind of picking up on some things. The agreement, when you talk about it being more fluid than it is a one sort of go in there, design the park and walk away, I mean, our agreement with you would be more of a fluid thing as well, I'm assuming. It would be ongoing as opposed to a,
One-shot deal.
But
Yeah.
more than ongoing, we will set you up to be yourself ongoing.
Okay.
So like, as there are 2 kind of proposals that we did, but one is most also like maybe training. So, the friends in the city could be independent. But one thing that I want to add, that in the past few years, we developed also a way to look at, from the economic point of view, how this will help the city. And so maybe with the help of students, for example, we can start, doing, setting up a baseline information, so we can observe how many people are coming, where they come from, et cetera, and then compile. And that is very important to start setting that up, is like essential, actually. Because everybody wants to know, so how is it going?
And I think, like I said, this, I can't, I guess emphasize this enough, the stakeholders, it's important to do what they need, but I know just from being, involved in sports, having a father who coached every sport imaginable growing up, that this field space and, having an ice rink possibly or
Well,
something.
Lindsay, part of the stakeholder process will be the recreation departments and recreation commissions of the villages
Yeah.
that belong to the town, to see what needs they might have, whether, I know that some discussions were already had with Rybrook about, the softball field, and it might not be a needed thing. because Rybrook and Portchester may have enough of that, but maybe not enough lacrosse fields, not enough, Little League football fields or things like that. So that's all going to come out from the stakeholder conversations.
Yeah, in fact, I want to add that the Power 10 at the regional, so people, for example, doing workshop, we put like a big map of around, and they can say, okay, here there is this, that. Do you know that there is a basketball court just around the corner there in Crawford Park?
Yeah.
So I don't know, I forgot, they explained me, so who is owning that? So in the sense that there is other things around that, you might not need to put all the fields in Crawford Park, but maybe you can say to the basketball people, okay, now you're allowed to use that court that is around the wall, and or the cross, how do you call that game, the other game, the lacrosse, sorry. We don't have lacrosse in Italy. That maybe can be played somewhere else, but then there is the information, and you don't need to have everything there. So I think.
Right. Well, Rye Hills Park is there, and there's obviously a relationship with the village of Rybrook that could be symbiotic as we develop along and work with them.
Yeah.
So to make it better for everybody.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for.
Much appreciated. Tell Meg that we missed her, and she'll be here next time.
Yes.
And we will discuss going forward.
Okay.
All right?
Thank
you so much. Excellent presentation.
Thank you.
Laura, do you have anything you want to say? Your input is always welcome.
Hi, Laura Klein, Prince Crawford Park. I liked the presentation. I thought what I liked about it is that there's not an immediate, they're not going to start building immediately. It's low impact, so there's some really good ideas. I like the hammocks in the park. That could be a great Eagle Scout project because I've got a lot of Eagle Scouts eager to do some work in the park. There's lots of good things that can happen at the park. We just need synergy and those zealot nuts besides me.
I wasn't going to say, I saw that at the bottom, and I was thinking, that's Laura, that's all. In a good way, in the best of ways. Denise, do you have anything? Nope? Thank you. Thank you very much. Much appreciated. Sorry to keep you so late.
Oh, no.
We're keeping everybody late tonight. Well, I think we've done our presentations. Comments from the public, not much of the public here. Anybody else want to speak? Open to anybody. Okay, and now we're on the, our resolution section. Denise, most of this is yours.
All of it.
Good evening, everybody. Denise Knauer, Assessor, Town of Rye. The first item would be the resolution for the Income Works contract. This is an annual renewal of a contract we've had. This is the third year now. And Income Works is essentially a professional real estate valuation consulting firm that serves mostly the assessment community nationally. It's an annual web-based data service that is updated annually based on real-time market data. It's a survey over time that builds upon itself, tracking changes in the commercial rental market. The survey includes rents and cap rates specific to our markets. I use IncomeWorks to track changes, recently the increases in commercial properties by classifications, to validate the findings of Vision, our CAMA modeling database and software. I also use it as a tool for validating commercial assessments that are being challenged. And although it cannot be used in court as an appraisal, it's certainly an effective starting point, an effective tool when one appraisal alone can cost $11,000 for one commercial property. So I'm asking you to approve this contract and renew it so I can move forward. Please.
Comments from the council?
Quick question, Denise, what's our historical expense on this?
It's remained flat. It's been 18 grand for the 3 years. Yes, he hasn't
Perfect.
raised it.
Thank you.
We've had this for 3 years.
This will be the third year.
Are there competitors to this company, IncomeWorks?
Not really. It's kind of it has a unique niche. It's sanctioned by the IAAO, which is the International Association of Assessing Officers, and it really fits a unique purpose.
All right. Further,
Is it, you had mentioned that there weren't really competitive programs out there to compare them to. Do neighboring municipalities use this as well, or?
A lot of assessing communities throughout the country use them. Nobody else in Westchester is using it at the moment. But David Jackson, the assessor for Yonkers, was actually, when he was the tax commissioner, he's the one who brought Tim Van Kirk, the principal of Income Works, to our Assessors Association luncheon to do the presentation. I think he'd love to use them, but I just don't think he can persuade the city yet to use them.
So our neighboring towns and villages, they use.
what do they do?
I don't think they're really using anything like this. They're not at 100%, so they're not really tracking it the way we do. I think basically they're managing their certs by hiring appraisers to do that.
So this basically is doing the work of some of the appraisal process that we're using.
Correct.
So that by spending $18,000 in a year, we may save the cost of an appraisal of $10,000, $12,000, $15,000 on a commercial property.
Or a couple of appraisals, right.
Yeah, per property.
And also, I use it to test the vision recommended increases. Right now, it's increases in commercial properties. So they'll do some consulting work as well as the software, and I'll ask them, can you take a look and tell me what markets specifically, like apartments or office buildings, are increasing, and what do you think they're increasing?
Have you had a chance to discuss this with the assessment task force yet?
No, I have not. I don't even know when they meet. I don't.
Well, I think they were having preliminary meetings prior to bringing you, and I think that you should make sure that they are aware that you use this process as well, because
Sure.
they probably do not.
Right. Okay. I'll be happy to.
I think this is money well spent, to be honest. And I would just encourage you that if this is year 3 of this organization, just to keep your ear to the ground and see what else is out there, and just make sure we're getting the best value for this. I mean, this would seem to me to make a lot of sense. And I would encourage us to approve it tonight, but I would just, see what else, just have your
Right,
eyes
because
open and what else is
things
out there.
change over
Things
time.
right.
All of a sudden,
And 3
something
years
pops up.
It's a good
I'll
time.
even check with David Jackson to see if
Great.
he's aware of anything
I'd
similar.
make a motion to approve.
Second?
I'll second it.
Call the roll.
Jackson,
Yes.
Nardi,
Yes.
Baxter,
Yes.
Villanova,
Yes.
Zuckerman.
Yes.
Thank you.
You're up again, Denise.
Okay, second item is a resolution for the CERT settlement for 18-Olivia Street in Portchester. It is a 4-family. I sent you a memo explaining it. I really can't explain it too much in detail in public session. If you wanted, we can go into executive session, but it's pretty straightforward. They had done an appraisal. I looked at sales of 4 families, although, the income approach should be used because it's a commercial property. Technically, somebody buying a 4-family would really be basing it on the purchase price. It's not, the income approach doesn't really work in that case.
But did they provide you with their financials?
They gave me an appraisal. This has been a while because it was actually presented a year ago, and then Portchester was looking to approve it. And basically, we've decided we're going to move forward with these certs. And I'd have to look and see what they've provided. Essentially, they would be providing a rent roll. I mean, we would just look at what the rents are. And even whatever they provide, we'd have to validate it anyway. We'd have to look at the composition of the property, how many 2-bedrooms, 1-bedrooms, and then just verify what the going rents are.
How's that? Oh, so you verified that? No. That hasn't been verified. Now, you know, I tell you, when I look at properties like this, and I know that we don't have a building department, but the Village of Portchester does, and they've been pretty good, and Steve Velardo he's always been very accessible to us. I would like to find out what the local building department knows about these properties. Sometimes you have, you know, sometimes there are open cases against them, violations, you know, things of that nature. And, you know, we're not gonna change the entire community, or let's just say the entire town, you know, with these little certiorari's. But when someone's coming to us, and we need to make sure that the applicant and that the property is really the right property that we are making this decision on. I mean, this is a legal 4-family home. This is a commercial property, and you know, you could make the argument that you know, in 2012 the assessments at $631,000 may be a little high. Bottom line is that in 2014, you know, at $511,000 for a 4-family property, commercial property, I don't know.
There was a property on 12 Fawcett that sold for $375, and I forget the date. I think it was 2012.
But that was a legal 4-family on Fawcett?
And I did have correspondence with the building department on this because Tony Soretto was supposed to approve it at the village board meeting on September 8th. And Peter Miley talked to him, and they said, oh, we have to talk to the assessor right away. There's something wrong with the use. And we had emails back and forth, more time spent to find out that they agreed with us that it's a 4-family. So it was a lot of time spent on a real small case.
Was this one of the ones, Denise, that we were talking about downstairs?
Yep.
In the conference room?
Mhm.
Right, and we were with the Village of Portchester, and we all agreed to settle that,
Right.
right? Okay.
My question is that how long has it been newly renovated inside?
We had opinion on this.
Because that would bring the value up. I mean, you got a 4-family house, and that was built in 1922. At some point, they had to renovate it.
Well, Charlie, our real property appraiser in my office, did an inspection last May, and it was observed to be in less than average condition as well. So I don't, you know, apparently they're not renovating it to
Okay.
any standard that, but we
So
did.
it wasn't kept up then?
Right, and we
Okay.
did make an attempt to do an inspection.
I remember we discussed it, the village, we had a meeting a month ago, more, 2 months ago?
A while
with-
ago.
With,
Yeah.
with all the attorneys, Village of Portchester, and we came to the conclusion that we should settle this case. So I'm prepared to move forward if the board is.
One more quick question. I know you made comment that you made an attempt to gain access to look at the interior. You know, I think we should have council see what the legality is. You know, is there a way that we can prepare legislation that if we're looking at a certiorari, that we need to be given access to the property? If, you know, it's almost like a commercial.
I would say probably not. It was, just a couple of years ago, there was a case law that came down that basically said.
Martha, microphone.
I'm sorry. Off the cuff.
There we go.
I'll start over.
Right from the beginning, okay.
There was a case that came down a couple of years ago, and I believe it was in Mamaroneck, and the assessor said, you know, we're going to full valuation, and we want in your house. And the court said no. That a homeowner absolutely cannot be compelled to let the assessor in.
Now
Or the
that-
building inspector.
Now, that's for full valuation.
And yeah, so CERT is a little bit different, because here is the homeowner is actually saying,
Correct.
you've overassessed me.
So I would like to look into legislation and case history with regards to certiorari, because
I'll pass it on to Paul.
Thank you. Because if I would say going forward, any property in the town of Rye that's going to come to the town of Rye and say that they are
I agree with
incorrectly
you.
assessed a commercial property, and they will not let us look at the interior of their building to see what their inventory is based on the data that we have or don't have. I think it's the right step forward, and I think it would also eliminate people from being disingenuous. These are always very contentious, but at the end of the day, I think a 4-family home for $511,000 with 4 units rent roll, I think is a
Well, if
bargain.
if I can recall, Dan Tartaglia at the meeting said roughly to Tony Soretto and Mr. Steers, Chris Steers, that basically one unit in a multifamily goes for about 100,000. Do you recall him saying that? So, I mean, this would fall right into that benchmark. But I do agree with you 100% that we should gain.
I think it's more important, actually, I disagree with you a little bit, Bill. We should gain access to those properties for which the fair market value is being applied as a standard. If we're using an income and expense, then it doesn't really matter as much. But Denise is saying that we are valuing this based on sales price. So sales price then would or not sales, but rather full at fair market value. So that what an inspection of the interior would reveal would be part of that value, as opposed to, for example, an office building where your income and expense statement would be much more relevant than your
Right,
market
and generally
value.
with a larger commercial property, because it's generally public, you can go and walk around anyway. There's
Well,
nothing
at the end
preventing you
of the
from
day,
doing
if
that.
If it's a certiorari, it's a commercial property. So if we apply the legislation, it has to be whether it's a commercial building or it's a multifamily property.
Well, I
So
think,
that should be the approach.
sort of to that point, we can also, without doing legislation, can't we make that as the policymakers, policy that we hold as board members, that can,
Well-
any agreement is contingent upon inspection of the home or having our people in there.
Why don't we get an opinion from Paul?
I think that's a good idea.
And we can go forward from there. I think that makes sense.
That makes a lot of sense. What's before us is this particular
Which
property.
has been hanging on a long time.
Yes,
It's about a
so
year now.
May I
but-
have a motion and a second, please, to?
Motion to approve?
I'll second.
We'll take a roll call.
Okay. Jackson?
Putting me on the hot seat, yes.
Nardi?
Yes.
Baxter?
Yes.
Villanova?
No.
Zuckerman?
Yes.
Okay,
Last
thank you.
item.
The third item is basically
After our
just.
discussion, do we need a discussion on
We
this?
do, because I have an exemption, so I just need to have it go on public record that right now in New York State, the solar exemption is allowed in municipalities unless the municipality opts out. So if you do not opt out, then I will be granting the solar exemption. So I just need to know that everybody's good with that, so that if you don't want to offer it, then we need to take another course of action.
And that's different than the original memo.
It
that
is,
that was
and I
the opt-in.
apologize.
No, that's
I-
fine, that's
there-
fine.
it's-
That makes
there's
more
so
sense.
many details
No,
in
It
assessment.
makes more sense for it to be an opt-out.
And yes, so it's a given unless the town opts out. And basically, if you could just let me know your thoughts.
This is for purchasing this solar, not renting.
That's right. This would be for an outright purchase of all the units and everything. And essentially, it's a wash. Whatever we add on to the assessment for the incremental cost of the entire project, that's what the amount of the exemption would be.
Yeah, right.
Right.
So,
So basically, the state law encourages wind and solar application for the homeowner.
correct.
And that's what, right. In order to change that, we would have to opt out. I don't
Correct.
think anybody on this board wants to penalize a homeowner for putting solar in. Am I correct?
And
Okay.
As
the
long as-
deadline for an opt-out would be May 1st. So, I mean, if we were to do it, we would have to act quickly. which
Right.
I don't
Yeah,
even know if
there's
we
no
have
reason
time
to.
to.
Well, first of all, we'd have to do it by local law, not by resolution, which means we'd have to call for a public hearing. So,
Yeah.
and I think that this benefits, we're benefiting the homeowner by not opting out. And I think
Correct.
all of
There's
us would
really
like
no-
to benefit the homeowner and encourage the use of solar and/or wind, correct?
Correct.
Okay, good.
Okay.
We've had our discussion.
Thank you. Do you want me
Thank
to go
you.
right into my assessor's report?
Oh, we have,
That's
we
the
have
next-
more, huh? Okay.
I'll try to make it brief. Basically, May 1st is the deadline for all new exemptions and renewals, especially for the seniors. We sent out a reminder notice on Friday and yesterday to all the seniors who have not renewed. It's a couple hundred, so it's going to be very busy between now and the end of the month, so we encourage them to come in as soon as possible. And the second thing that took us a little bit by surprise after Assemblyman Galiff and Senator Latimer informed us that basically there were not going to be any changes to the STAR program. Apparently, the governor's budget passed with changes, and all new people applying, although we don't have all the details quite yet, but all new people applying for the STAR, the enhanced STAR, will be getting checks in the future. All the people who are already in the program, they're calling it the exemption program, will remain in the exemption program. There may be some opportunity to cross over, but again, it's also new. The Office of Real Property Services at New York State Department of Tax and Finance still putting together all the details. There will be public announcements about it, and I will try to put everything as much as possible on the website. So any new applicants should be looking there for further information.
All right, and in fact, when you get this finalized for the website, the details will be on the assessor's website, but the front page should have something, Debbie.
Correct.
To point to it, so people who go right onto our website see it right away, that they should go to the assessor's page.
Right. And the problem with that is that, these are unfunded mandates that cause an awful lot of work for the assessment departments, and I'm not here to gripe, but just so you as politicians know that, and it's added work.
We're not politicians, we're policy makers.
Okay, policymakers. And postage, the town will be paying for postage to notify these people of the changes, because they've already given us applications. So now we have to send out denials, and so we're doing that to change the
So
state's.
Denise, could you just clarify what you said before? May 1st is the deadline for new applicants.
Right.
For STAR. So if you have STAR, is it automatically renewed every year? You don't have to do anything?
Yes, right now you do not have to do anything. There's no registration
you're
with New York
just still
State
in
or
the s- in the-
anything.
in the s-
You're
okay.
still in the
I think that's good
system,
for people
and
to know.
that's it. New people should still come in and apply by the May 1st deadline,
Mm-hmm.
because we have to follow this sort of unusual procedure, at least for this year, and we'll deal with that. But there is a change in the program, and it's coming.
Thank you.
You know,
Okay.
Mr. Supervisor, given these changes that are going to happen eventually, I guess, but we don't know exactly how.
It's
they're going
probably
to
going to
happen.
be for this tax bill, the school
Okay.
tax bill coming up.
I think it's important that the assessing task force be aware of this. And so the task force, although they're there to maybe help in some instance, or what their specific plan is, I don't know. I guess they're going to discuss that. But I see them as an aid or an extension to the assessing department. So if there's something that they can do, maybe help with community outreach, maybe get the word out, or maybe get all the information together. Maybe the assessing task force, maybe a couple of them could meet with people in a conference room at your discretion. You give them direction, and they can volunteer their time using their expertise to help you.
I think what the first step should be is that you advise the task force members that there is a change and what your plans are to implement that change. They may have an idea about how to make it more simple to do. They may not. But just to advise them that this change is coming so that they're up to date on it, and the effort that's necessary by your office to to get the word out and to get the applications out.
Right. The problem is we're the face of STAR, and so any change that Albany makes, it always comes back to us. And the calls are just, there's countless calls.
And along those lines, Gary, I would encourage us to think about maybe the task force giving an update to the commission in terms of what
I already spoke to them about it. They're not quite ready yet.
Okay.
Possibly.
But I mean,
at
just
the May
sometime in the
meeting.
near future.
Yeah,
I mean, we
possibly at the
constituted it
May
back in-
meeting.
Good.
Okay, and that's it for report announcements.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Crawford Park report. At last. I mean, we've seen you all night, Laura, but
I rushed through dinner to make sure I got here on time. So
You had
here
dinner?
I am. Thank you. I'm Laura Klein.
some of us have
Thank
been
you
at
so
a
much
6
for-
o'clock meeting.
Yeah, yeah, no, I don't envy you guys at all. But I do thank you for letting me come and do the Crawford Park report. Don't ask me again. No. So I guess I can break this.
We'll ask you again when the agenda's shorter.
Okay, perfect. So I'll talk about what the Friends are doing, and then I'll talk about what I want to see in the parks, because, so this will be about a half an hour.
We're here all night.
So first off, I'd like to say that we have a meeting tomorrow night at 8 o'clock, so you guys can all come, and I'll keep you until 10. And no, seriously, we have a lot of great things. This is our high season. This is the busiest time that we have here in the spring. So we recently reseeded the wildflower garden with Zika's help, and Zika took down an old dead tree that's cleared away. So look for new growth coming soon. We ordered over 300 annual plants to be planted in our annual planting day, which takes place May 7th. And volunteers are needed for that as well, if anyone is listening still. We meet at 10 o'clock a.m. in front of the mansion, and we'll be there until about 2. So come as you can, come and dig and plant, our 300 flowers around the mansion and the sunken garden and the privet hedge, and the beautiful blooms will show all season. So that'll be a great way to give to the community. Our goal this year is to increase the beautification of the entrances and exits of the park. So we started last year with doing a little renovation to the landscaping as you enter on Ridge Street. We plan on continuing to do that, and we have kind of a little bit of a challenge because one side is shady and one side is sunny, so symmetry and getting horticultural plants to grow the same way in different lighting is going to be kind of interesting, but we're still working on a plan for that. We have an existing plan for the beautification of Wilton Road, and so the Eagle Scout is hopefully going to get that project approved this week, and will be on his way to be doing that quickly because he needs to move on this within the next 2 weeks after approval, because he's actually moving out of town, so that'll happen soon. We spent about $700 of our funds buying trees, and another $800 buying a bench. But all that money is kind of, we had $600 donation from a local resident on Wilton Road to offset the cost of the planting, and the bench is being donated by Rye Youth Soccer, so they gave us $1,000 for the bench. Thank you. So, this is all about community, supporting community, and using the Friends as kind of the conveyor belt to make that happen. So we have these beautiful containers, these oversized containers that I've bought. They're in my driveway right now, and waiting to move them onto the Lincoln exit. So where those green posts are, I'm having Zika chop those down because no one's using them, and we're putting up these ginormous oversized containers, and we'll be planting seasonally to, welcome people as they're leaving and driving by Lincoln Avenue with this gorgeous display, which we're really excited about that. And I was working with the SUNY Purchase Graphic Arts class to help try to do a proposal for new signage in the park. They kind of went off the beaten path, and they only gave me one design. And
I'm smiling at that one.
and then they ran out of time. So they basically were going to come tonight and present, but then they decided that they just quit. So I haven't given up this idea, because I don't know if you guys have noticed the signs in the park, but they're faded, they're old, they've been there forever. They're very negative, like there's a rules and regulation sign that says no picnicking without a permit, no soccer without a permit, no alcohol, so I wanted to kind of liven that up with your permission, and where nothing's gonna happen without you guys. But I'm looking into getting different proposals from different signage companies for how much this is gonna cost. And so, I mean, a lot of what I'm thinking is that we'll have a nice wooden sign at the front, and then to save cost, we'll go back to the aluminum kind of signage within the park, because you can also add more color and things like that. So I've got a whole presentation on that, but I don't have time to go over that. But if you want to come to the meeting tomorrow night, please do, and I'll share with you my thoughts on signage for the park. And April 3rd, we had that crazy windstorm, cold snap, and we lost 3 trees in the park. We had a crabapple tree that was across from the carriage house that snapped in half. We had an elm tree that we lost, and then we also lost part of a red maple that was across the street from the kitchen, from the mansion. So we lost a few trees. I'm not planning on replanting, especially the elm tree, until we decide on what we're going to do with parking, because that's right next to the ball field, which may not be a ball field, depending on if the community needs it or not. So I wouldn't recommend replanting in that area. I mean, when Bishop was here, he thought about taking all the elm trees down to make room for parking, and we were like, hell no. We're not going to take down a tree, but if it falls down, then there's another story. So let's try to let that rest and see what happens with that open space now. But sorry we lost an elm, but maybe we can use it for the betterment of the parking situation. We also had a walkthrough with a landscape architect in conjunction with this CDBG grant money. So we're trying to look for a kind of a vision for, we got this grant, glad we got the grant, but now let's slow down and try to figure out how to artistically do this project. One of the designs that Arconic had come up with was putting this ramp right in front of the mansion, and it just spits out right in front of the mouth of the entranceway. And it's not very pretty, and I think that we can find a better space for that. And so I think Greg had emailed me that we do have to come up with some kind of RFP for professional services, and landscape architects and architects in general have to be.
Let me.
Go ahead.
I can talk about that a little bit.
Okay.
Why don't you finish the rest of what you're doing, and then I'll get into that.
Okay. I'm working with two other Eagle Scouts. One Eagle Scout has volunteered to put up all of this new signage that I have underway. So he's waiting kind of to see if that's going to work out for us. And the other one is putting in a gravel path inside the wildflower garden, and he's installing a little bench inside the wildflower garden, so you have this kind of hidden garden, spot. And we have a Music in the Mansion coming up May 14th, which is also our rain day in case if it rains on the 7th, so I hope it doesn't rain, because we're going to have a nighttime event at the mansion where we're having Dead Grass, which is like a Deadhead cover band play, and everyone come out and enjoy the fun, groovy night at the mansion. It'll be fun. It'll be a lot of fun. Then I have a lot of other stuff to go through, so you go ahead. What's that? Yes, we do have a tree that's being donated through Olmsted, and I just was emailing you as I'm waiting for meeting for my time. But so he wants the photo up on Arbor Day, so I've got to coordinate with you guys to figure out who is going to come from the town to, dig the hole, to plant the tree.
When is that?
29th of April. It's the last Friday of every April, Arbor Day. And he's planting a river birch. I went out and figured out we lost a tree down kind of by Lincoln Avenue on the Talcott Woods side. It gets really wet there. So Teresa Stevens, my horticultural committee chair, suggested river birches really do good in the wet, and it'll do great there. And you don't have to worry about watering it because it
I
gets
have a
low.
whole bunch of river birches in a low
Beautiful.
area that really grows fast.
They grow fast, and they're beautiful. So, yeah. Do you want to talk about the landscape
Yes.
architect? Okay.
Right. Just to advise the board, I'm going to be meeting with Greg Arcaro on Friday, talking about the architectural services for the grant and other things. And The thinking right now is, first of all, we have to make sure that the choice of Arconics for doing the grant is sufficient for him to be doing the architecture for the entire project, especially the mansion, because professional services are subject to, if not advertising, to at least getting 3 estimates. So I know that this board last year went through a process to choose Arconics, but we have to make sure, number one, that that process is sufficient to continue Arconics to do the more advanced work, such as construction supervision for the project. Secondly, we're looking at breaking out the work of the mansion with the other 2 parts that we're going to be working on. One is, as Laura was mentioning, the sensory garden. And Laura's been working with a landscape architect, but even in this case, we have to get at least 3 professional bids for people who are qualified to do that kind of work. Secondly, we're going to look into having a separate process for the fully handicap accessible playground, because there are companies that specialize in playgrounds for handicap, that need to be handicap accessible, and they have their own, most likely have their own architects, people who design these things. So we're looking into that. So it might be actually 3 professional contracts rather than one for the architectural services.
We have to get it done in 2 years, right?
I'm not really,
No, I mean,
I'm not really concerned with the time limit for the playground and for the sensory garden, because those things, I think,
yeah, they can get done.
that can be done in a matter of months. But, the mansion is another issue, because as you rightly point out, the ramp that was designed is probably not in the proper place. And when the Van Loos, the heirs to the Crawfords, visited, that's the first thing that they saw when we showed them the plans is, you shouldn't have the ramp in this place. So there are changes that need to be made to the original proposal, as well as the proposal for the pavilions, because when we went through the pavilions and we looked at the plans, Debbie and I, with Arconics, who else was with us? The Van Loos weren't there at that time, right? We noticed that the bathrooms were just not large enough. The facilities are not quite what they should be.
That's the 1970s code, that's why. The code's changed since the 70s.
Well, yeah, but all I'm saying is that the plans for the pavilion bathroom accessibility, the final plans need to be changed from the ones that were submitted for the proposal. That's all. It's not a major change, but it is a change.
Gary, if I may, because we kind of brought up, and I know it's late at night, everyone's probably ready to.
We're here all night. It's okay. We're here all night.
No, I was just trying to get sort of the timeline of, we were discussing the sensory garden and the playground, and making sort of, or improvements to the mansion. We just had the presentation on the project for public spaces, and I was just wondering if we were going to, let's say we decide to use them or another group or whatever, are we going to go forward with planning the sensory garden and the playground before we consult with them or after?
Well, that depends on when we can consult with them. What we're going to do, I believe, and of course it's a decision for the whole council, is to go forward with the process under CDBG, because we do have timelines to choose. I don't think that the issue of the playground and the sensory gardens is going to interfere with the overall plans for the park that we might get involved with PPS.
But the location might.
Possibly, but hopefully we can go through with the PPS process, whether we choose them, and we have to decide if we're
Yeah.
gonna choose them. and we have to negotiate a contract. So, you know, that will go all together. I think it can be a parallel process. I think that the concept of using PPS and the placemaking has a much broader application than than just the concept of the sensory gardens or the playground, or indeed the mansion, because you know, the mansion has to be worked on, and we're really dealing with making it handicap accessible and making better utilization of the second floor as a result. But we have 30 acres of parkland to plan, to talk about, that have nothing to do with the CDBG grant, nothing whatever to do with it. At certain points, obviously, it will intersect, but I think that when you're talking about 30 acres, and they were talking about the 10
Yeah, the
place
10, yeah.
things, et cetera, I think that this is, if you look at two circles, they intersect, you know, and that's what we're talking about here. But on the one hand, we have the CDBG process, on the other hand, we have the placemaking process. That's how I see it. I don't know how
And I
you all
feel
do.
like, and just talking with the PPS guys, they aren't really into structural change, especially at first. So, you know, because they want to try things out before they make any hardcore structural changes. I mean,
And we have to make structural changes to meet our obligations
yeah.
under.
And I don't want to hold that up because, you know, people are scratching their heads trying to figure out what to do with the park. We have this money, we need to use it, so.
And I think Gary had mentioned sitting down and going over with Mr. O'Carroll what our deadlines are, and, you know.
Welcome to join in on Friday.
I may.
Well, I think it needs to be, at least to be a little bit more transparent than that. Whatever deadlines are out there, they need to be communicated
Sure.
via email to the council and to the stakeholders. That needs to be important. You know, run it out there, you know.
Sure, absolutely.
By the month, by the year, and get the deadlines going.
Right.
With regards to, you said you were removing posts. Where are these posts, and what are they?
They're right
what are they
next to, one of
currently
them has George's mailbox on it, on the carriage house. They're right there. And it used to be they would put a chain up to block people from coming into the park, but that doesn't no longer happens. So
doing? Well,
these,
hold on a second. It doesn't happen. Does it need to happen?
You can't, because you gotta get an apparatus up, because they put their gate up on Ridge Street, so you have to have, be able to have an apparatus come up, and they come up Lincoln Avenue.
Okay,
That's why.
all right. So, where's George's mailbox going?
I bought a mailbox post for him.
Okay, so,
I went to Home Depot, I put it in the back of my car. We've
Oh,
got
so you-
Zika, I've got Zika's, I gave Zika some paint to paint it green like the rest of the
okay,
posts.
so you're moving his mailbox.
We're gonna move it just, I mean, it's gonna still be very accessible to the post office. It'll be right in the same location, but
Okay, I
it'll be
got
kind
you.
of close to the planter and to the road there.
Okay, so there's two posts that are being removed,
Mhm.
and the two,
Beautiful planters being placed there.
Okay.
Instead of these,
that's very good.
Being that I was
Like we-
speaking about the chain and the gates,
Uh-huh.
I got a good Eagle project for you for next year.
Oh, lovely.
Get rid of that hideous gate in the front and on Ridge Street and put nice wooden gates up.
Nice.
That would be a nice Eagle project.
That would be a great Eagle project. I'm looking
Yeah.
for Eagle projects. I was thinking that would,
We should
that
also
would be
put in a
good one.
spike strip that if you drive the wrong way, it's all flat tires.
All right.
We have to put a warning sign first.
You're right.
Yeah.
Then we have to design the sign.
Then we have to do something for the fire trucks, and they gotta go up that way.
Oh, yeah.
Hopefully they
Whoops.
won't have to. Right.
I know that also, Hope, we had spoke about at the last meeting, I attended in February, the discussion was long-term events being held at Crawford Mansion, specifically weddings, and, you know, sort of allowing them to book more than a year in advance. And I brought up the concern of having these important events with
While
the
we're under construction.
while we're under construction. I think it's sort of a dangerous proposition. I don't know where we ever ended up with that, or
I mean, I think we decided that we're gonna have to be very careful with that. And I think Billy brings up a really good point. We're gonna have to establish a timeline as to how this work is gonna get done and when. And the first step is, working with Greg, because he's our grant administrator. I don't know the timeline off the top of my head, or I would say it. I
Right.
know that we have to start moving now
Right.
and get things going.
So Greg is responsible for the timeline? I'm asking. I mean, because
He's
I
not
feel like.
responsible, he's the grant administrator, so he's gonna
Right.
advise us, and we, as a council, will
Uh-huh.
have to determine, because we're gonna have to issue contracts.
Right.
We're gonna have to issue, in the first place, professional contracts to do the design.
Uh-huh.
We're gonna have to ultimately do construction contracts,
Mm-hmm.
et cetera. So this council is gonna be, totally involved.
Right, right. I mean, I just want,
Greg is the advisor.
Greg is the advisor. I just feel like there should be one project manager for the grant
Well, he is.
implementation.
He is, but he can't issue the contract. We have to issue the
Right,
contract.
right. He doesn't, well, okay. Talk to him and ask him if he's the project manager, because I asked him directly, are you the project manager? He's like, no, that's not what they hired me for.
He's,
So,
the
I just
project
want to make sure
manager.
that someone's driving it
Right,
and that it gets done.
Project manager is a term of art,
Uh-huh.
okay? Debbie, what is his official title? Grants?
Well, he was a program administrator.
Program administrator.
administrator.
Program administrator.
Regardless of what his title is, he's the person that's going to administer the grant, make sure that the documents are handled properly, make sure that we know what the timeline is. The whole purpose of going through the process of hiring the professional services is that architect or engineer is going to oversee the project.
Correct.
That person that's going to be hired professionally, not Greg Arcaro.
Is the project
going through
manager.
the
Will drive
process,
the
and that's the
contract.
Right.
person that's going to have the plans in front of them and is going to know exactly what needs to go where it needs to go, and if there is a problem, if there's an obstacle with materials, if there's an obstacle with labor, that's the person that's going to hold that vendor or that contractor accountable to their services. So we don't know who that person's going to be yet.
Right, Billy, that's very well put.
Yeah.
That's the
Okay.
project manager. In other
Makes me
words,
feel
he's
comfortable.
going to be issuing the subcontracts, going to be, I guess we'll have to approve them, but he's going to be doing that whole process and being on site at a time that will be determined in his contract, on site to oversee the work.
Right, okay. And once you have that guy in place, or will
Yeah,
in
it
place,
may very well be Arconics.
Right.
So,
Then they have to communicate, obviously, back to the scheduler of the events,
right.
because then we got to block
right.
off the
And-
time for
and
the,
the grant administrator is the one who will then file all the papers
yes.
with.
Which is a huge job.
with the
I mean,
state.
it's- Yeah, yeah, that's a job in itself.
I'm sorry, I have one more question. This Grateful Dead show,
Yeah,
what's the,
cover?
no, not the cover, no.
Decibel
go?
volume.
What is the, obviously, anybody from the town of Rye knows that when Phil Lesh
Uh-huh.
and company comes to Portchester, it brings a certain crowd
Right.
that lingers and stays for
Uh-huh.
days.
No, this is a local cover band. I don't think that he's got that kind of following. I mean, he plays
Okay.
at like festivals around.
They're not
the-
camping out.
Is it-
I
No
just-
one's camping out.
Is it acoustic?
No
I just-
one's, yeah.
I just want to be, I have to ask it
Yeah.
because I've experienced it in Portchester.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
it's
this isn't
been-
Phil
And
Lesh.
and that's usually further, not Phil Lesh. It's when
Further,
further
yeah.
comes.
I get it.
That's when they come out they're there for the week.
Regardless of what it
Yeah.
is, I'm just looking to make sure that we don't have
Phyllis has an older crew.
Yeah.
They don't camp out as much.
people
They're
camping out
people
in
like
Crawford Park.
people like me.
Is that gonna be an electric or an acoustic show?
It's electric.
It's electric?
Yeah. But we keep it, I mean, he'll be fine. I mean, the capacity of we can only fit 100 people in the room, so it will be, but it'll be a good show. It'll be a great, fun show. There's another opening band who's a local dad who's playing as well, so we'll probably get a lot of
Who's the opening band?
Do you know Danny Schlaus? Dan, it's his name, I can't remember the name of his band, it's like, a play on his name is like Schlausch Dan or something like that. But he's a nice guy. So, moving on with my laundry list of things that we need to get through. So, on the list of things to fix on the park is the front stone wall that's still been crumbling. It's been, there's 3 places where the bricks have been falling off, and I don't know where that is on the work order pipeline. We talked about the new signage for the
Excuse me,
park.
Laura, who usually fixes that stuff? Is that Zika?
I guess Zika could do it. I mean, he just needs to get a backhoe. I mean, it's literally like a dry stack wall. It's an old, it's not concrete. You just have to replace the.
All right, so before we just quick say, let's have this guy do it. Zika has a very structured contract of what he.
He's made it clear this is not on his.
Correct. That's what I'm saying, that this is not part of Zika's contract. So any work like this will be bid out, and so we will have contractors bid for this work.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Okay, great. Last year, there was $9,000 allocated to fix the asphalt path. Bishop was saying that, we were going to do this, and this is some kind of deferred maintenance issue that wasn't addressed, and there's some big potholes inside the walkway that, it's, I guess it's about 10 years old now. And, one guy recently, when one of the Eagle Scouts was doing his project, his dad tripped on the path and twisted his ankle. And he said, my fault, whatever. He didn't, no harm, no foul. But there is some dangerous potholes, and people run, and kids run around that. We need to address that and see where the $9,000 that was allocated last year.
Laura,
went
it's a
to.
good question with regards to those paths.
Mhm.
Now, I know that if you were to come up with a design for the path of Crawford Park,
Mhm.
you wouldn't have put asphalt around the park.
I didn't design them, but.
I know you didn't,
Yeah.
and I disagree when it was done,
Uh-huh.
and I still disagree with that today, that
Mhm.
you're just taking asphalt, and granted, came from the state, I believe.
Mhm.
Um,
Latimer
It was
got
a
it.
grant.
Still-
George Latimer got
Uh-huh,
it.
yeah.
So we're taking asphalt,
Mhm.
right? And we put it around Crawford Park.
Mhm.
It just doesn't fit
be
for
crushed
me.
stone.
Okay?
Crushed stone.
So,
Right.
the
But
question
how do you
that-
handle crushed
Did
stone
we
on a
not,
slope?
did we not
Right.
have this discussion walking the park?
So,
Yeah.
Yes.
my question then is, great, it's okay that we repair these potholes or areas that need to be repaired, but is that really what we want for the park, for the walking path?
Mhm.
Do you think that there is a different material
Material?
that should be implemented? So if we're gonna spend $9,000,
Mhm.
do we spend $9,000 and just put more blacktop?
Mhm.
I mean, pave paradise, and put up a parking lot, all right.
Yeah.
I would say, well, listen, if maybe we have something better.
How much will it cost
as a
to
matter of
take up
fact,
a mile's worth of asphalt?
we're not
and-
talking about digging it all up.
Mhm.
The areas that are in disrepair, maybe those are the areas that you block out and you start to use pavers. Pavers are cheaper. This has come up time and time again. Pavers are cheaper than putting down asphalt, I believe. So I think we talk about a comprehensive plan, Mr. Supervisor.
Absolutely. Mhm.
Having a better plan. Let's have a better plan going forward. It's easy
Billy,
to
I
fix.
agree with you.
Yeah.
To tell you the
I mean,
truth.
and we have about a 400-foot walkway that's going in from the handicap parking into the playground area. That's part of the grant money. So how?
That's not gonna be asphalt.
Well, I mean, we have to figure out what's ADA compliant as well, and
Right.
find out, and because it has to be wide enough. I think it's got to be 5 feet wide or something like that, isn't it?
Yeah, well,
No, it's
3.5
3 or
feet?
4 feet, I thought.
4.5
well,
feet?
we'll
It's
do
wide.
whatever.
Yeah, it's wide, yeah.
We'll do whatever has to be done, but to the immediate point of the asphalt, I agree with Billy.
Mhm.
And just when we were walking the park with PPS, and the subject of the path came up, I said immediately, I said, why do we have an asphalt path in a park?
Right.
I mean, it's like,
Well, there's some parts of the path that are really boggy, so you would have to have some kind of impenetrable, like an asphalt path, like to.
There are permeable, let's say, ecocentric systems that could be put in, that have been developed over the last dozen years, that we should be looking at to install in the park, and not install and/or repair with asphalt.
And the other thing too is that asphalt, also depending on what kind of winter you have, et cetera, it needs constant maintenance. I think, you know, if we do end up
Which you haven't done.
spending a little bit more on the walkway, but yet it lasts a lot longer and needs a lot less maintenance, it would be worth.
Maybe some of these sections you take away, and you put, you know, if it's that bad, you take that section away, change it. Maybe you go to crushed stone,
Right.
as Councilman Nardi mentioned. Maybe you go to one section, maybe it's, I don't know, mulch. Whatever it is, I think we need to start to make this change, you know,
I think that should be a goal, even if we're not gonna do it immediately. When we master plan this park, we should be looking to do that.
Okay, I mean, I don't visually it doesn't look appealing to me to have half of an asphalt path, then mulch, then gravel. I mean, it's like, that looks like a mishmash of not well being,
Patchwork.
not planned.
Well, no, you
Yeah.
would pick which will be, you know, longer lasting and more economical to put in. You know, whether you do the pavers, crushed stone, or whatever, you would just select the one instead of doing a patchwork.
Well, I think the first thing we need to do is look at what needs to be repaired and how it can be repaired, because we want to eliminate the safety factor. That's number one.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. So if it's a temporary it depends on how big it is. You know, maybe something you could put, you know.
Coal patch.
Coal
yeah,
patch,
just
yeah.
sand or something even, temporarily, to make sure it's safe. It has to be safe, number one. Then.
And also observe who uses it. I mean, there's people with strollers that are using it, that pea gravel or whatever you're recommending may
Right.
not be great for the
There
stroller
may be,
wheels.
there may be green material that is
Yeah.
equivalent in smoothness to asphalt
Okay,
that we need to look at.
okay. When we were walking around with the landscape architect, we came across the buckeye tree that's by the pavilion, and I know it's got a big X on it because the plan was, once the ramp this was a plan that was before when we were renovating the pavilion, that the buckeye needed to go because it was leaning kind of over the pavilion, and it was causing a hazard, as well as it needs to be moved because we need this ramp space for the handicap accessibility. So the architect that we were talking to said that we could have it both ways. We could save the buckeye, and the buckeye is a pretty strong old tree, and it's one of the oldest, in my opinion, most beautiful trees in the park. When it's in full bloom, it's just gorgeous, and it gives a lot of shade to the pavilion anyway. So I'd like to challenge you guys to try to work around a plan that could both save the buckeye.
What also happens with that tree is that creates a shade, and then we get a lot of moss and stuff on top of the roof, and it's rotting the roof out. That's one of the reasons, too, that they wanted to take the tree down.
Okay, that's a valid
We
point.
could talk about that. We're not cutting it down tomorrow.
Okay.
No.
No, nothing's, okay. Excuse me. There were some green posts along the drive as you're coming up to Crawford Park, onto the mansion on the left-hand side, that were installed a couple of years ago to prohibit people from driving onto the lawn. And if you're familiar with the green and the rope
Yeah.
posts, they're crooked and the ropes are broken, and someone needs to either take it out and just leave it open, or maintain it and fix it because it's in bad disrepair. I'm just giving you, sorry, you guys are gonna kill me for asking me to come, but parking issues we know are a huge issue. We need to come up with a solution for that. One of the community members, when I was talking about if we needed a baseball diamond or not, he brought up the idea that to increase the width of the sledding hill would be really easy. So the sledding hill is if you're coming up right up to the on Ridge Street, you come up this big hill, and there's a sledding hill that all the neighbors use, and it's a very narrow path that goes down. And just to the left of it, there's a bramble patch, and there's nothing substantially growing there. It's just weeds. So his suggestion is, why just not clear that whole thing out, so in the wintertime, you have more space and less of this like narrow corridor for the sledders to go down and take more advantage of that killer hill to go down. So I don't know if that's something you guys want to consider doing
Consider everything.
or not doing, but it
Your
would make
ideas
it
are
safer.
mostly very good. We consider everything.
Okay, okay. Another idea is having a green sign, one of those standard green signs on the hutch that says Crawford Park. I don't know who to reach out to get that done.
State of New York.
The state of New York. So, I mean, I think that a lot of
They have
people.
not often been cooperative with local communities.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't have to be a fancy sign, it just, one of those standard green signs, because a lot of times people will come to Crawford Park and they don't know how to get there.
I'm saying we just go put it up ourselves.
We could.
What is it, a couple bolts?
Yeah.
Get the sign?
Yeah, but you gotta get the state prison to actually make the sign, they have the prisoners do it.
No, I say we get it done by SUNY Purchase.
They'll put an elephant on it.
That's what they did. They put an elephant on it. But that's right.
That
The
was-
design for Crawford Park, they had elephants.
Elephants.
And I was like, what?
Appropriate for
What's the
summers.
elephants?
What do they know? Maybe they know something.
Yeah, maybe. Another idea out there is, I don't know if you guys have done this or not, but investigate solar panels for the pavilion.
We have.
And?
The azimuth is not correct for
For the sunlight
for
coming
that.
onto the.
As a matter of fact, the town of Rye has undergone several discussions with regards to solar. And actually, one of our greatest opportunities would be to put in solar panels where the parking lot is at Rye Town Park. Rye Town Park, when you pull in, right there on the right.
Right.
That would be obviously something that, I think a lot of people are for. Some people in the city of Rye may be against that as well. But I think that's a discussion that's ongoing for us. The other opportunity that the town of Rye has, because we have so much land, is to do a solar farm. So any property that we can't identify, we can get panels up and try to work that out. So the obstacle is the pitch and the location of the roof for the pavilion. Same thing for the mansion as
Yeah,
well.
I don't
So-
advocate it for the mansion, but
I
the
think it
pavilion,
would be
I thought would
unlikely that it could be approved to put solar panels on a mansion.
Well, I'm just saying, we looked at it, and it's limited, because it's not just putting it up. You want to put it up and then have it actually work for you. That's the important aspect of doing solar. It's got to work for you. It can't just be a minimal, you have a massive investment, your ROI is out of
Definitely,
whack.
yeah.
So we have thought of that.
All right, good.
Yeah.
Check it off the list. So there's the issue of maintenance, ongoing maintenance in the park. I've been working with the Friends of Crawford Park for 12 years. So when I started, we had a staff of people that were working the park that we had materials, we had equipment, we had a landscape architect that was, attached to the park, and he drove ideas through. And then Carvin's administration came in, and, we were going to dissolve the town. So it's easy to cut, it's harder to build. So now we're at this next, new board, and I'd like to see, obviously, I think that we're hopefully all in agreement that we should be working on maintaining the park better. And I don't know if GPS is the right candidate for the job. I've gotten nothing but complaints from people that are really, really in the know, that are, at the park a lot, and they see that they don't get off their mowing trucks. They mow, and then this past time they mowed, and then they didn't finish the job.
They left clumps. I rode by today.
Yeah.
They left clumps. You got a dandelion field down
Yeah,
there.
the dandelion field's going crazy. I mean, it's, I don't know, I know that we don't have a contract with them right now. I guess we're going month to month.
Debbie, talk into the microphone.
That particular mowing incident that you described apparently was when GPS cleans up the park, they turn all the leaves and the twigs into mulch that they put back into the lawn. So what you were seeing was not mowing of the lawn, but rather mulching of the lawn.
But they were-
That they say that their first mowing is going to be this week.
Okay, because they
There were
didn't
clumps.
complete the job.
There were clumps. It wasn't like when you mulch, it just spread nice.
Yeah.
These were clumps.
How you mulch it is you mow it and then you mow again, so that if you have these big clumps of grass, because the grass has grown so big that they spit out clumps, then you mow it over again and you leave the clippings, that's fine. But you do have to go over it a second time. So,
Or you gotta rake it out.
or you
Debbie,
gotta
we-
rake
We
it
need
out.
to review the contracts with GPS.
I know that they
Yes.
were the lowest bidder for the job and that it's hard to get someone to do the job for their price, but I don't know if they're the right people to, continue. They've done.
Either way, I believe their contract is up. I
Mhm.
thought it was at the end of the year, but apparently it's up now.
Yes, that's right.
So,
Yeah, they stood up in front of the board last year and they wanted to extend the contract and you guys voted them
We
down.
voted it down, that's right.
So, I
As a
mean,
matter of fact, just so you know, we've been proactive, myself and Councilman Nardi met with GPS. It was the end of last year.
The year before?
Year before.
Yeah.
So when concerns are brought to us and when we have our own concerns, we address them right away. And it wasn't necessarily that we went with him because he was the lowest bidder.
Mhm.
He was the lowest bidder for a reason, and that's because of this massive machinery that he
Yes,
has.
right.
I'm sure you remember that.
Yeah, I mean, it's huge, and so they can
Correct.
just.
So that's part of the reason why he was the lowest bidder, because of his investment in the machine, the amount of time that it takes, limited amount of manpower to do the same job. Doesn't mean that if there was another competitive bid, that we wouldn't have went with the competitive bid. With regards to the process, obviously, we'll look to create,
Put it out to bid.
a
Yeah.
new bid spec, a new bid package, and we go from there, you know. I don't, never feel that the town of Rye is not looking to do what's best for Crawford Park, but doing what's best for Crawford Park also has to be part of that as a balance
Right.
of doing what's best for the taxpayers. When you talk about when we had that, the staff that was there, it was a much different time. It was a very bloated budget. And even before dissolution was a discussion, the discussion, the identification of the way that the park was operated, managed, and the employees worked really was not in the best interest of the residents of the town of Rye. So that's the reason why that change took place.
Right, I mean, there's good people everywhere, so, I mean, if you were to, like, George is great, and John is great, I mean, John Zicka and George Hoban, who's the caretaker, they're good guys, they really care about the park, and they'll do more than what's necessary to get the job done, so, I mean, from my perspective, from the Friends' perspective, they're friends of ours, and there's always good people if you look for them, so
Right.
if you're ever considering hiring someone to actually manage the park, I mean, I feel like there's nobody living there. I mean, George is living there, but he has a full-time job. But no one's there on a daily basis to open up the park, to show people the park. I mean, I've had friends who have ridden to the park, and they're like, the customer service that I've had from renting this facility is just non-existent. I mean, they won't come and open up the park for us because no one's staffed to do it.
But you're talking about, you see, there's this balance, and this is a discussion that's going on for many years. That has to be the balance. And the balance is it a passive park? Okay? Or are we looking to make this of a commercial entity? Okay? And you've experienced
It's
that
not
over
even, not even a commercial entity, Billy, because, I mean, we're talking, obviously, it's well-known, we're looking for a park director for Rye Town Park, which is, people there call it a passive park also. But that's a park that needs a park director. The question is Crawford Park the same kind of a thing that needs a park director? I would suggest no, but maybe it needs somebody that.
Like a part-time person that can
that
answer the
is
phones
there.
at Crawford. I mean,
It's
when you
something
dial
within
to the, you know,
Yeah,
to
so it's
Grace
something
Church.
we-
You can transfer it over, and then they can do the scheduling from there. There's already internet that's still there, that's up and running, and so you
No,
have
it's something
connectivity
we
there.
can look at to provide customer service and see what the cost might or might
Yeah,
not be.
so you schedule
But
like
it's-
Monday,
but
Wednesday,
certainly we don't
Friday, or
have-
something like that.
Certainly, we don't need somebody there 24/7
No.
to be waiting for somebody to show up at the
No,
park.
no, you don't. But they can also call the community and find out I mean, they could be that person that's the outreach person that's tapping into the needs of the community and finding out, you know, and building out these programs. And, you know, it could build into something if you envisioned it that way. So yeah, that's kind of where I was going with it. You know, a part-time parks person to breathe life back into this dark Crawford Park mansion that sits still unless someone's there to rent it. And, you know, where is our priorities? Is it to create another study? I mean, I know we just had this PPS study, and I don't know if this is the right thing. I mean, I've been doing this for 12 years, and, you know, we've had an engineering study about how to build a stairwell that's in a drawer. There's a parking study that said that we need 438 parking spots that's in a drawer. There's the capital things that you guys spent so much time on, and it never got implemented. So I'm worried when we see PPS coming up and saying, oh, I have this great idea and I want to make this big presentation and make this proposal for you guys, that, you know, what we really should maybe consider doing instead is to hire somebody to actually make it happen and to have more accountability and more customer service in the park.
You know, Laura, you talk about the capital plan. That was a plan that was developed by former Councilman Nioris
Yeah,
and
Marty.
Billy and Tommy, all working together. And yes, it really wasn't it. They started to implement it at the end of last year. But that capital plan is something that's going to be incorporated in the work that we're going to do at the mansion. I mean, that's all going to be part of it. That's all going to be folded in to what the plan is, not just the handicap accessibility, but the doors, the
The
windows,
windows, yeah.
all the things that are in that plan will be part
We're
of
just
what.
waiting for that, we're waiting for the grants, this, construction to start so we can do everything at once, so it won't be so.
Right, we're obviously not gonna put a handicap bathroom in, and then, you know, not do the windows in the bathroom, for example.
Right.
You know, it's all gotta be a comprehensive plan that whoever is the so-called project manager will be looking at to let the contracts. The fact that you're doing handicap accessible bathrooms and putting an elevator in doesn't mean that you're not gonna do the windows at the
Right.
same time.
Right.
Or if plumbing is needed in the non-handicap accessible bathrooms for some reason. I mean, you're not gonna do it piecemeal. That's what happened towards the end of last year. I noticed that they were doing part of it. They painted it without putting the windows in. I mean, you know, I was looking at that and said, why would you do that? But it's gotta be overall. It's gotta be an overall plan that's going to be put into effect. And it's
Okay.
gonna be done basically either mostly all at once or staged in a way that we're all gonna understand what the staging is. And this council is gonna have total buy-in to it.
Okay. Well, I mean, great. I'm happy that we're, moving in the right direction, and I think that we, as a community, you know, deserve to have Crawford Park be part of, you know, well,
Well, I think we all feel that way.
good.
Absolutely.
Not just the zealots, not.
I think, you know, when it comes to that, I think we're all pretty zealous about it now. I think
Good.
we're all excited about what the prospects for that park are gonna be.
Great, great,
All right.
great. That's it.
Thank you, Laura. Would you do me a favor, your remarks that you made and all that list, would you give it to Debbie, please? So that we
My
can make it as a,
lists.
so that we can have an idea of what the work schedule should be for the next couple of
Okay,
months.
great.
You know,
Right.
that list really needs to get to George Hogman. George Hogman needs to be the conservator of that list, because there are some things that he can do within his purview, like the wood stakes up the right-hand side of the roadway that may be down or askew. That's something he can handle.
What about repairing the dry stack wall? I mean, how damaged is that dry stack wall?
I mean, there's just bigger, it's not that damaged. You just have to look at it and see there's some big boulders that are, big
Right.
that you can't move
Well,
by
you know, the
hand.
question in my mind, because I don't recall seeing it
Uh-huh.
in the state that you're describing, but doing a dry stack wall, is that something that any average contractor could do, any landscaper could do? Or is that going to require some kind of specialized knowledge like,
It's
you know?
usually a mason.
Like a mason.
Mason or a landscaper, either one will do it.
I agree with Tom.
Mhm.
But I would make sure that this.
Councilman Villanova could just.
I'll do my best. I would get this list to George Hogman, though. George, because everything that you told us, these are, just so you know, George gives us an update every day.
He's great.
He's looking for big things, but he may not be looking for the small
Oh,
things.
yeah, and we have a schedule to walk around the park and look at trees once they start
Okay.
budding out.
So I would say try to get George Hogman on the small things too, and he can monitor.
Right.
That'd be great.
He mentioned that the asphalt and the entranceway, at the actual road to Crawford Park is crumbling right at Ridge Street. And that's, it's all torn up.
At Ridge Street.
At Ridge Street, the entranceway.
See, now that's something there, we wouldn't repair, I wouldn't say to repair that with asphalt. I'd say do a cobblestone apron. That's gonna be the entrance, if you're
Ooh
gonna
la
invest
la,
the time
lovely,
and money.
yeah, yeah.
That's what you do,
Mm-hmm.
And that, and the cafe at Crawford, I want the first cup of coffee.
In the pavilion, you do the
No,
pavilion.
no,
you put a
Teresa
kitchen-
Stevenson had this
put a
idea
kitchen
of
in the
like when
pavilion.
there's
Right.
soccer going on, open up the doors and have coffee and classical music and let people like hang out inside the mansion while their kids are playing. I mean,
It's a great idea.
it's a great idea.
All right.
Great.
Thanks, Laura.
Thank you.
Oh, Davey, I see you sitting there all night long. I can't believe, do you have a report?
No,
No.
thank you.
I'll be very quick, because Billy has to get home for dinner. The end of April brings a couple of things, and they're all tied together. Two, it brings the make whole for the school districts for this year, which it's actually better than last year. It's about 300,000 less, but it's still 2.1 million that will be making whole to the school districts. That's outstanding school taxes that are unpaid, and the make whole date is the end of April. So that's, April brings the high water mark for our outstanding receivables, which at the end of March are about 5 million in total when you add the school district's 2.1 million to that. So that's,
Are we gonna have to go out for a tan on this?
that puts the pressure on us every year, and the tan date usually is mid-October, because that's the make whole to the county for the 40% that's due the county. So it depends on what collections come in. So the tie-in to that is that M Group, the new outside accounting firm that was hired by the board, has started, and I guess it's been about a little over a week, and they've brought in a number of people to work for, to address 2015 and 2016 issues to get up to date. Supervisor Zuckerman has asked them to attend the May meeting to give an update, and we'll be meeting with them, Debbie and I, in the next week or so to get an update of how they're making out. They're applying a lot of resources to get caught up and get a status of where we are, not only for the audit, but for 2016 as well. So as part of them coming on, we'll start to address monthly reports, cash flow statements, income statements, balance sheets, and things like that. So that will help us as we go forward to look for possible TAN and other bonding that we will be looking at.
I'd like to have a meeting at some point when things get straight to talk about outstanding bonds, the bans, possible serial bonds, and that whole issue.
We will address that with the outside accountants as well, and we do have bond counsel that we utilize, and if we continue to use them, Squire and Sanders, and they've helped us in the past with going out for bands, and we do have a band that's maturing in October, but as additional work capital is looked at for Crawford Park and actually even Rye Town Park, to consider converting the band to serial bonds and also including other improvements for the town in that conversion. So that will.
Yeah, that's the kind of thing that we want to go.
Right.
It's not only that, but the possible bonding for bridge repair.
The initial ban was done for the bridge repair, about 1.7 million, but if there's additional bridge repairs or
I
improvements.
think the budget indicates that there was a thought that one of the bridges would have to be repaired and would be the subject of a bond. So, it hasn't happened yet, but it's projected in the budget. So, we'll have to look at that.
And most likely that, depending on which bridge.
Yeah.
Depending on which bridge, is about a 50% share with Mamaroneck and the town of Rye.
Well, Hillside Avenue is 3 municipalities.
Yes.
Well, yeah, there's
Yeah.
one, I don't remember which bridge
We'll
of the
cross
7.
that bridge when we get to it.
Yeah.
Or not. Or not cross it.
Or not. Or not.
So, so I guess the plan is for next meeting that the M Group, and prior to that, we'll get an update from them. It's kind of how they're making out
Yes.
with.
And I know the tan is sort of it's October, it's a long ways away, but I think we need to,
Comes quickly.
yes, we need to look at basically if it's a necessity, and if it is a necessity, how do we ensure that we have the money for next time around, so we don't have to.
Yeah, well, that's called budgeting.
It's more of a cash flow issue with
Yeah.
the town than it is for operations, but
Yeah.
it depends on, because the town's budget overall with appropriations about 3 million, and we collect about 175 million in taxes. If there's
Which is a pass-through.
It is.
Right.
and
It's
that's
like
the-
a payday
That's the
loan.
reason why, I mean, we collect money, obviously, in REM and things of that nature, and Dave is exactly right. It's purely cash flow, and we have a very limited budget. And we also do a great job of keeping the taxes, the tax levy low. So that's the reason why the
Yeah.
TAN, not a ban or a bond.
That's it.
Thanks.
Thank you, Davey, and
Okay.
thank you for staying. It's been a while. I mean, now the tax season is basically over. We're gonna see you more.
It was over yesterday.
Yeah.
Just relaxing.
Relaxing 11 o'clock at night. Very good. All right, comments from the council people?
Sorry, I know it's late at night. I saw the bridge report, and I saw on there Otter Creek Bridge, which I believe we had passed that bond in the January meeting. I don't know if it was January or February. But I do wish that there was someone here to discuss it, because it does state that, the work will begin on the last week of April or the first week of May, and we're quickly approaching that time, so I think we need to keep an eye out on that.
No, you don't mean the bond, the contract was issued.
The contract was
Yeah.
issued, excuse me, I
It
misspoke.
is. Yeah. Debbie, would you call,
John.
no, not John. the-
Oh, Ottoman Kirby?
Ottoman. Find out where that is?
Because
What the projected start date is?
I know at Memorial Day, that bridge becomes busy.
Do you recall what the projected work schedule is there, how long it's supposed to take? I don't recall offhand. Is it a month, is it 2 months, is it 6?
Well, they said it would be completed by Memorial Day weekend.
Yeah, they
but-
assured us it would be completed by
As long as-
Memorial Day weekend. I think it was just basically painting, so I don't think it would be that long of a,
Well, they gotta scrape, they
They're
gotta
waiting
paint, they gotta put all their booms down to collect all the scraping.
Right.
So they've got a little bit of prep work to do first. And then once the prep work is done, then the actual painting should go fast. But it's the prep work that's gonna take the time.
Right.
And also, we gotta let Chris Bradbury know when they're starting, because I talked to him when we were at the dinner. Rich Swinglager, I'm sorry, Rich
Yes.
Swinglager. You gotta call Rich, we gotta let him.
Chris know also.
Yes.
Yeah. Keep him in the loop.
Okay.
So, yeah, Rich, I'm sorry. You gotta let Rich. I got my guys mixed up there.
That's all right.
Village manager is
getting late.
confused.
Right. Tommy, anything?
No, I'm done.
Good.
Tony? No? Billy?
You better be good.
No comment.
Good.
Could we just have the minutes approved because we didn't do
You're
that?
right, we didn't do that. We skipped it. Has everybody read them? Can I have a motion in a second?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
And one more thing, I'm sorry.
Go.
Before you close. Nick Mecca, may still be waiting for the inspectors to come back with the bags from the election. But he asked me to just remind everyone who pays their taxes, well, not through a mortgage company, they paid in person or through the mail, that the county and town taxes due by April 30th, and since it falls on a weekend, that they have until Monday to pay without penalty, eliminate phone calls asking that, and also, whenever it falls on.
That's for everybody who's watching this broadcast now.
Right.
It's
Okay.
live. That's still up.
And that's
Okay.
Monday, May
Yeah,
2nd,
just to-
right?
Right,
Right.
yes.
Just a note, because we didn't cover it, the tax receiver's report was submitted, the town clerk's report was submitted, and now the clerk is giving the receiver's oral report.
Right.
Okay.
And he left a budget slip for you to look at, to see what goes with the mailings,
Right, great,
includes with the mailings. Okay,
terrific.
you're on.
I don't have anything.
Oh.
I'm finished for the night.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Thank you, everybody.